Welcome to the Ikko Ikki campaign in Shogun 2 with the Master of Strategy mod. Our faction's actually called Hongan-ji by the way, but I'll be saying Ikko Ikki in this campaign for clarity. We begin with our territory split between 3 different areas, and most of our troops are in the southwesternmost area near Osaka. Here's the most difficult area. We've got 2 territories right next to each other with low-level castles and not many troops to defend them. We'll come back to it and work out what we're going to do there with the likely knowledge that the area is going to fall. But for now, I'm going to make my opening move with our starting units, which as I said are mostly concentrated around Osaka. We've got a few samurai and a few generic trash units under our faction leader. The plan is to attack the faction right next to us, the Besho. Moving forwards we can see that the enemy starting units are here as well. What I wanted to do was capture the castle, but that army was actually in reinforcement range. I did think it wasn't, I guess I just didn't even check, that's probably what happened there. They essentially have the same army as us, but a bit smaller, so we certainly have the advantage here. Plus we're going to get the first shots on the skirmishing since we're standing still. The enemy aren't going to bother skirmishing though, they just run right at us. Seeing that, I run my spears forward right away just before their cav charges into our archer and gun line. Now then, a huge brawl will break out as the melee infantry from both sides just clash, and with it being mostly the same stuff, there's no particular advantage here, although having the enemy's cav in amongst this will help because we're fighting primarily with spearmen. I think their general probably died somewhere in this fight because we do actually see them rout quite quickly. Because they're reinforcements, I don't think the game tells you when the general dies, especially not in the replay when it tends not to tell you even at the best of times. Anyway, as you can see, it seems their morale did break. We had them surrounded and we got them pounded, and now that entire army is going to be destroyed. They'll try and flee, but they're already sort of surrounded, and with our cav we can easily chase them down and absolutely delete that army. You can see there are 2 Besho generals standing around to the east. They are not going to be of any trouble to us, but there is a castle to the west. That's what we want to focus on. But by the end of all that, all the remaining Besho troops are dead, and their castle is ours, their faction is destroyed. All good stuff. However, this little bit of the war isn't over yet, because they were actually the vassal of the faction that owns the next castle down the road, so we need to keep going from here. However, the wars elsewhere are about to start. Here are the Asakuro declaring war on us. They are the faction to the south of our little northern set of territories. So they are bordering us and they are going to be in trouble. Here's a little look at the diplomatic map. You can see all the red is the bit that doesn't like us, so everything really. And of course that only gets worse because the more territories you take, the more debuffed your diplomatic relations get. I'm also going to disband the units that started the game at Nagashima Castle. That will allow me to re-recruit them over with my main army basically, that's the thinking. So Nagashima is to some extent being abandoned here as well. Even though it is our best castle, it's just absolutely surrounded by other castles, and someone's probably going to take it soon enough, so we can't really reliably hold it, especially with the Oda, who start off the game as quite a big faction because we aren't starting at the usual date. They're probably going to be trouble for us. Looks like things are going well though with the Akamatsu. They come and attack the castle, not going around to attack my reinforcements or any shenanigans like that. So it's a siege defense where we're fighting pretty much the same thing that we have. Now the main strategy begins. The enemy charge in and we receive them into these melees. The slope of the hill makes things a bit awkward in terms of the line of sight, but broadly speaking, we should now be able to hit the enemy with bullets and with arrows and gradually kill them. They of course will be killing us because they have numbers on their side in this melee, in particular here at the western hill where like 10 units at a time charged in against our couple of units of Ashigaru, and you can see how the line of sight isn't that good here really. It's pretty easy for them to shoot our men, and hard for our archers to shoot the enemy. We needed the fight to happen closer to the walls, ideally. Meanwhile, the guys already engaged, well, it's just an absolute bloodbath as both sides annihilate each other, and we just hope that we're annihilating them a bit more than they're annihilating us, which should be the case with our guns mostly hitting the enemy, although of course the accuracy isn't high enough to guarantee anything there. We have stopped several units though. and I'm stopping to admire the carnage, bodies all over the place, and broadly speaking, Shogun 2 for some reason just looks really good. It looks better than the games that came after it, like Rome 2 for example, both in terms of the animation quality and just the graphical quality. I think the way it presented lighting is just better in some way, and they gave up on that at some point. Soon we get to this result. The enemy lost absolutely everything down to the last man. We lost over 1,000 men ourselves, including one full unit, and it is going to take a long time to get those troops back. So we're in a weakened state, but we still have stuff alive. We probably have enough to take their castle. However, after their army dies, they immediately offer me peace. Looks like the AI is really on the ball in this game. I feel like the later Total War AI wouldn't have remembered to do this. But yes, they're going to try and not allow us to kill them. We can offer them vassalship, and they would be willing to accept that. So this is an interesting question. We almost certainly can conquer them at this point, but it's easier to make them our vassal. It also increases our leader's honor, giving us a public order advantage. The downside is we don't have their castle. They had a good castle, and it's a nice strategic point to defend. However, as you can see, I do go with the vassalship deal, so they will now have to act as a buffer, blocking the main western road between all of the other factions and our new bit of territory. We'll see how that goes. In the meantime, looks like the Asakura are on the move, so now our territories up there are going to be in big trouble. So I just let them take both of my castles in the same turn. Thus, all the gains we've made so far are wiped out just like that, although now all the territories we have but one are together, so our strategic situation has improved over the course of this part, I would say. And next, we're moving ahead a couple of turns to the next thing I did, which was to start moving towards the Ashikaga Shogunate. I had worked out by this point what I wanted to do. Now my plan right now is to go sit in the Ashikaga Shogunate territory. Seems pretty provocative, but I do have military access with them. The plan is to walk through their lands to go eastwards, because the clan next to them, the Rikaku, are at war with someone I started the game allied to, the Suzuki to the south, who are also an Ikko Ikki faction. So I can use them to join a war against the Rikaku. And now the plan is I can take at least one castle with this army and see what happens, and if I can, break through to Nagashima and actually link up this little area, create a group of allied territories next to each other, which will be slightly disconnected from our main blob, but not all that badly. The worst thing though is that the Ashikaga Shogunate also revoked their access, so now I can't move through their lands to attack the Rikaku. First though, we need things to get a little bit worse because they were going too well. The Oda declare war on us, the thing I feared happening all along, and they finally actually did it. So now Nagashima is in enormous trouble because they're a big faction right next to us, and indeed they have a full stack that gets thrown at the castle immediately, although it doesn't quite make it, so now they have to sit out there in the winter taking attrition. As for the main force, the opening that appeared was one of the Amako's enemies, or their only enemy I should say, captured Himeji Castle from them. So now I can potentially declare war on that slightly weaker faction and get Himeji Castle for myself and perhaps something else that they hold nearby. First though, the Oda army does attack at Nagashima with a load of Ashigaru. It looks bad, but we do have a unique castle here because it's a historical location that gets buffed out by the mod, and we have some good garrison units as a result. The thing about this castle though is that while it's very big and sophisticated looking, it's only a level 2 castle in practice, meaning there are only 2 climbs or 2 gates between the outside and the capture point. These guys are doing an extra climb for no reason, which is helping me out. But basically, once they get past the first wall, they can actually run through the whole castle up a big causeway and get to the final wall where I am. So the real battle will be right here as the enemy gradually arrive and walk into the line of fire of my elite ranged units. We've got some gun samurai and some onobushi. All we can do now is wait and hope that we kill a load of enemies in some way. While we still have ammo and while the enemy are distracted in front of the wall by our samurai, we are going to be picking up a whole bunch of free kills. Looks like that Ashigaru somehow got the best of the Katana samurai there. I guess it happens from time to time. For the most part though, we're going to be winning both the melees and we're sort of winning in the friendly fire department because our armoured samurai are likely to not die when our arrows hit them, but the same might not be true for the enemy, so it's all good. So we do actually repulse the first couple of enemy units, but now they're getting serious. Now the bulk of their army's in the castle and they're coming at us in an enormous human wave attack. and they crash into our tiny line of samurai in front of the gate. So it looks like it's time for a more difficult melee fight, but with the guns shooting in and the arrows raining down, maybe it's better than it looks. Although that said, we do only have that advantage as long as we have ammunition, as earlier mentioned, and looks like the Onobushi here are already out of ammo. They can also take advantage of the fact that a lot of this wall isn't very defended. They can climb up and fight with their archers. Where the archers are samurai archers, that might be okay facing against Ashigaru, but it's not always samurai archers. Now it looks like our katana samurai have done the work, that being they have all died. However, the area is covered in enemy bodies and many of the enemy units did rout. Because they're only Ashigaru and because their army doesn't have a general, we don't have to kill that many of them to get them to go away. After a while, everything chain routes and actually we very suddenly just win this thing. It's a heroic victory with mostly garrison units lost. The Oda army's not completely destroyed, but they're heavily damaged, and that's a big propaganda victory for our insurgency. I want to take Himeji Castle from the new faction that just took it from the Amiko. I didn't want to attack the Amiko because they looked too strong, but these other guys, the Uragami, don't seem so strong, so I'm willing to go for them. And luckily enough, whatever took this castle isn't here anymore, so we just have to fight the garrison. That's easy enough for an auto-resolve to deal with. And boom, in we go. This is a more stable front line because Himeji, like Nagashima, is a special historical location that gets a better castle than most. I think the downside is you can't upgrade it, so you can't get big garrisons in the late game or something with the historical locations. But then the Rokkaku come over to attack Nagashima, so we're back here again with the same situation as before. The samurai, however, should hold out just fine against the attacking Ashigaru for a while at least. The ninjas that come in behind them are more of a problem. They're also an elite small combat unit that can take down the samurai, but their morale isn't as good and they actually rout after taking only a smaller number of casualties. Off they go then, and they're going to get shot as they go as well, helping us out a fair bit. And yes, things are just generally working out now. We can still hold on, wait for the enemy to rout, even though our samurai are getting annihilated slowly but surely. The enemy are getting more annihilated more quickly. I noticed something strange during the rout. A lot of troops seem to be coming over to this little spot off to the side of the gate, where, upon closer inspection, they're actually climbing down into this pile of corpses. I've been playing Sekiro, so I was basically expecting some sort of giant boss to come out of this situation. But I'm guessing there's some kind of secret tunnel that goes somewhere and the game is willing to pathfind into it. Not really sure what's going on. I was looking around here trying to see if they were popping out somewhere, but I didn't see it. We end up with this result, another heroic victory. It seems this castle can't be taken by a single stack of troops. Our garrison is just big enough to deal with them. But first I was over with our offensive, because we can go and take the next castle after Himeji since it's just undefended, so that's a quick auto-resolve for our main force. We not only don't want to bother defending it if the Amiko do attack us, because we can go back to Himeji instead, which is much better, but I want these troops to go and attack another hostile castle. There's another place we can take just down that road to the south. So we'll start going that way, might as well go via the castle. Shogun 2's got a hidden trick, which is usually, in most cases, if you go into a castle then out of it, you get much more movement points than you do if you just walk through a province normally, because walking near a town costs a whole bunch of movement points, but moving through it doesn't cost any. We advance up the road. There's a hostile castle with a bit of an army inside. It's just a load of Ashigaru, but we will take moderate casualties if we just auto-resolve or even try to manually resolve it. Because I didn't want to do that, I want to keep our army intact. I instead wanted to see if I could vassalize these guys. They have only one region, which means they are up for vassalization, and I did make them my vassal, mainly because they were willing to give me absolutely loads of money, like 8 times my turnly income in exchange. So now it's like, well, even if you die or don't help or even draw me into an annoying war, at least you gave me loads of money. I also got a trade deal with the Amiko, so the hope there is that they'll like me a bit more and be less likely to attack. First, they do just destroy my vassal instantly, then they declare war on me, so that did not go very well, and it seems our wars will continue up here. Looks like it was a good idea to save my main force though in the end. My main strategy is going to be to try and use Himeji Castle. I want their nearby armies to come over and attack this well-defended location. So yes, with nothing happening with the Amiko, I was starting to think maybe I should go and attack them. And then, well, things get bad. Looks like the Oda have some reinforcements at Nagashima, and they end up coming at us with 3 stacks, including 1 stack which is half generals in their main force under Nobunaga. Some serious command power here. So it looks pretty bad. This would be the perfect time to say, well, I'll see you next time. However, because of what actually happened, I'll just quickly whiz through this one now. We start off fighting just a few enemy units, because in that first attacking stack, with them being so much focused on generals and cav, their siege attack potential isn't that great. Only a few units actually come in and attack me. That is it. We get a case of the classic Shogun 2 AI giving up. It actually didn't even deploy many troops even in its first army, and its other 2 armies are just sitting in their reinforcement zones not doing anything, haven't been given any orders. But really there was no fight, it was just an hour of waiting for the time limit to go away, although not an hour in real life thanks to the speed up time feature. And that's that, we actually hold on to Nagashima even against 10,000 enemy troops. The Amiko's territory is split into 2 wings from our perspective. There's the territory along the road going west down the coastline, and then the territory on the other side of the coast and a little bit on the joining road between the 2 coasts. That is to say, if we go left and take out the smaller pocket of Amiko territory directly to our west, then we can just focus on going up one road and we'll have the enemy constantly choke pointed. We did see in the past there was an Amiko army in this direction, but they are not here anymore. There is a way for them to sneakily move them through forests back to their territory just on the edge of the little junction. So it's possible they move by without me noticing, and that explains why I am able to move through and actually capture both of the other Amiko territories on this road. With no resistance, only garrisons were here and they can be auto-resolved relatively safely. So with that, our little choke point setup is done. Now we only have to focus on fighting in one direction, but we'll need some time to get our main force back before we do anything with that. But right now we've got smaller fish to fry because we've got another battle at Nagashima, and Nobunaga has brought his stack of mostly generals to attack. So this fight isn't all that difficult, since we're going to be facing first a half-stack wave of trash, then a half-stack wave of generals. It's going to be a nice portioned out fight where we're always going to have a strong defender's advantage. Here with the big neck guard in the middle is Nobunaga himself, who, if you don't know, is one of the major historical characters in this setting. He's the guy who won in real life, in the real life equivalent of this war. And here he is, probably not having a very good time actually, because he has to fight my elite troops in front of my gun line, and his bodyguards are being shredded. They have quite a few generals, and the general's Hatamoto unit is quite good, so there is a small amount of threat that they'll actually hack through all of our stuff. However, they're probably not going to achieve this with most of their men still in the delaying area getting shot by my remaining gunners. It looks like the enemy actually didn't commit all of their generals to their suicide attack. There are some still out there, and they come to try and save this guy in particular. Yes, it's Nobunaga himself spotted running through the moat, so I went after him with my cav. But the enemy's reserve generals arrived at just about the same time as I reached him. So it seems the enemy will have a chance to save their faction leader in this brawl. Luckily enough, someone manages to actually get Nobunaga, and that's that. The job is done. That's a big win for us. And this win proved to be a little bit bigger than I thought it was going to be, because afterwards, that was enough of a victory to get a peace deal from the Oda. They are willing to back down off Nagashima, which is absolutely great. At first I actually didn't accept this deal. I think I might have been wondering whether I could somehow capture some of their territory first, but I don't think we really can. Eventually I came back to the diplomacy screen and grabbed not only peace but an alliance, so we've really turned that one around. So massive congrats to the respawning garrison of Nagashima. Now in the Uragami turn, my vassal, they actually go and attack the Amiko. They should have waited until the very next turn when spring breaks and I arrive with my army. So here it's my turn to lay siege to this same castle. And as we can see, it does have a full stack of troops inside. Not the best troops, but we would probably take substantial losses making the attack, so I decided to just continue the siege. The hope is, because it's a vaguely balanced setup, they may just sally out and give us an easier field battle instead. However, in the Amiko turn, it looks like they do have more stuff in the area. This almost full stack under their faction leader comes over to cruelly attack my militia. We're going to retreat from that one, but then they go on to attack the main force doing the siege. So I retreat. The Amico want peace, but we're going to say no because we're going for at least this castle before we make any decisions like that. Things actually went better than expected. Their stack could have attacked our one militia unit and got the same siege draw-out style battle as last time. Instead, they go past it and attack my main force, meaning we actually are using all of our stuff against just one of their armies, the situation I was trying to get to happen, so thanks to the Amico for that. So yes, now we're just going to sit on our hill with our gunners and archers shooting down, and our spear line runs forward to stop the enemy spear line. This big fight along the line is actually slightly to our advantage because our mainline troops are better than theirs. On the other flank it was our katana samurai fighting some enemy militia, and there we won instantly, so there we go, we've got that right flank under control, and we'll come around with a bunch of our own militia to crash into the enemy. On the other flank, our cav are doing the same thing, so we can say goodbye to the enemy archers. The main line is gradually being won just because we have better stuff than them, but really the killing blow is going to come in a second. You can see we've got them almost completely surrounded and we start attacking everything all over the place. It causes a chain rout and everything still in the fight just gets out of there. Here's the result. Lost about 400 men, defeating 2,500, all good stuff. Actually, things just got worse. Another Amico army appeared, this time stronger and bigger than the one we just defeated. However, some more Uragami suicide spam also appeared. I tried to attack the newly arrived enemy force, but it just runs away. So it looks like we're going to end up kind of back where we were a couple of turns ago, only a bit worse. And they've just come to challenge us to battle. Still, not the worst situation, at least we're still not fighting both of the enemy armies at the same time. And even though the enemy army we're fighting now is better than the one we just defeated, the balance bar still looks good because we have all this Uragami trash coming in as reinforcements, the ideal sacrificial units. As you can tell, the Uragami aren't really in a position to help us. This battle has happened too fast, so we're not going to be leveraging much of an advantage from having our reinforcements or allies here. That said, you can see on the balance bar, we are actually straight up winning, and again, our main line is better than their main line, and our archers are better than their archers. Plus we have this nice position on our right flank where our guns can shoot down over everything from that little raised point. Good stuff. And here's the result. Again, we lost a few hundred men, but the enemy were totally wiped out. Very good stuff. We're looking more beaten up now, but we're still somewhat ready to fight again. Our main line is down to something like half strength, but they're decent units, and a lot of the stuff inside the castle are just Ashigaru and militia. In fact, we can see them right here because right after that battle, the castle garrison does sally out and gives me the fight I was looking for a while ago. My allies eventually defeat the one unit that went after them. My besieging force is rushing to be behind the enemy as the main battle starts to actually take part in the fight, and that fight is getting started. I've got my guns out in front, and once my men decide they're going to actually pull the triggers, we'll start gunning a few enemies down. There aren't any particularly high priority targets, so I'm just letting them fire at will into the blobs, and after a couple of volleys we'll have to fall back because the enemy are just charging right at us. Anyway, here comes the main fight. The enemy charge forwards. I have actually got my guns out of the way this time, and boom, there's the main engagement. Our lines are diminished from the previous fights, but they're also better, just like in the previous fights. So while we're going to take some attrition, we're not exactly facing disadvantageous fights. We can just leave them to grind away, but we needn't. We've got stuff we can do on the flanks as well. Our warrior monks bring down the enemy cav on our left, so that's fine. And on the right, our allies are causing a kerfuffle, and this is all I really need them to do, just distract a few units to make the enemy's main attack weaker. Our besieging force is doing the same thing, although less effectively. We're fighting some samurai here with some Naginata militia. A terrible matchup, but we're actually winning because of morale. The samurai are actually considering routing at this early stage in the fight, and really this fight's pretty much over. Here's the final result. We didn't kill everything, unfortunately, but they didn't kill us either, so that's also good. We get a new general here because the besieging force has won 2 battles in a row or something. I think that's the rule behind getting new generals like that. And then in the next turn, I do have to auto-resolve some survivors to finish this castle off, but we can do that for free because we have such a big advantage. There we go then. this was a very long and grueling battle to take this one castle. It's not a very important castle in terms of the region, but strategically speaking, it's vital. Since we defeated 2 Amiko reinforcement stacks and a third army inside the castle, the Amiko probably don't have much more back there, so it's urgent that we attack as soon as possible with whatever we have left. So the point is, we brought a load of stuff over and took that Amiko castle. I was planning to go for the next one as well, but you'll see there's going to be a bit of a hiccup in that plan. Now in the end turn sequence, the Amiko ask for peace, and I can make them a vassal, so I agree to that deal. With that, we have peace. Oh, no we don't. So the peace lasts about 5 seconds. The little faction that I actually walked past on the way up to attack the Amiko just now declares war on me. They're kind of off to the side in the valley in an awkward position. They don't really attack me right away, they just move out to the road. So that means we need to go back, pretty much, and see what we can do about those guys. Anyway, the Miura do come over and attack this castle, and really this is just a chance to see what they have. They've got one army which is the generic starting army that all factions have, and some trash, and a second army which is half the size and is pretty much just trash. So clearly they don't have any decent recruitment buildings, it's all of the militia units. Nice and easy to rout in principle, but very numerous, and this is a sensitive time to be attacking us since we're still weak from our previous battles. However, they are going to attack us right away. We actually ambushed them by accident because I had to hide my army to start moving back south from where I was. We did tank a few shots from their gunners, but not very many because they're in a boxy formation, and we slam into them, getting a favourable melee. These guys are running over to fight with the rest of my army on their own. Obviously we can just sit here and shoot some arrows at them, and shoot some guns indeed if my men here bother to do it. Our cav at the back there were potentially in trouble because all of the nearby enemy archers could shoot into the melee and take them out. So I actually charged the rest of my cav with the generals across the field to also go and attack this archer group. And this is pretty safe with so much of the enemy's army focusing on reforming up on that hill. These archers are totally exposed, and now they're totally screwed basically. They're just going to die there on their own. And then finally everything else came down the hill. The AI realised it probably needed to attack now before my reinforcements got behind them, or more realistically the AI just smelled that I now outranged it, so it didn't want to sit on the hill. But overall it was a good move, whatever reason it made it, although it's still a worse move than withdrawing, which would be easier for the AI because now it has to fight an uphill battle, not literally as it turns out, but yes, things like these militia will not be able to take down these samurai and warrior monks. There are some routing just instantly after starting the fight. But yes, another victory, and another case where we've taken 20% or so casualties. Our army's starting to look nice and beaten up with virtually no melee capacity left. And yet we're still going to have to fight on with this force because after these guys withdraw, the half-stack sitting in the castle comes over and sits in front of us. At first it's hidden, but we do see it, luckily enough. So there it is. I thought maybe we could just auto-resolve them, but no, we're actually so weak after all these battles that even our 1 and a bit armies can't take down this 2/3 stack of pure trash. We've got a balanced engagement, so now we need to play this one and hopefully play it carefully, because if we take any more losses among our melee line, the game's going to start deleting our units. I've got a good thing going where the archers shoot into the exposed parts of the enemy line, but that enemy general is going for my archers, so that's not going to be a very good thing for long. The main fight starts. It's another case where they'll have numbers on their side, but our units are just straight up better, and it turns out our gunners are going to shoot into these melees as well. I didn't think they would do that, but I guess the gaps in the lines are just about big enough for them to go for it. The main fight's now drawing to a close, as the enemy's militia units will now be tempted to rout, having taken losses. There's a big stutter as my cav go in for that charge. Those stutters, by the way, are caused by me taking screenshots. It does have a messing up effect on the replay because it saves the time you spend with the game pause going around taking the shots as part of the orders you've given, and just gives a load of null orders for a bit. I think the later Total War games kind of sorted that out a little bit, can't remember. Anyway, things go well. As you can see, this battle is now over. We've won on our flanks and the centre just routs. We did manage to not lose any full units, although now we're even closer to doing so, many units on the verge of destruction. Moving on, I tried to go for the Miura Castle, but the survivors of that ambush from earlier are in the castle, and along with a garrison, they've now got a substantial force that does match our attacking force. So once again, we're not out of the woods quite yet. the enemy in fact sallied during their turn. So here we go, our nearly dead force fights another battle. This time we're even closer to losing units. I tried doing something that someone recommended in the comments, where you give attack orders to your guns just as the enemy come into range to make them fire faster. In this test case, it actually did the opposite. My Ashikaga gunners fired much later than the samurai, who I didn't give any orders to. So who knows what's going on there. And as you can see, the gunners just tank the enemy's melee charge because it's okayer for them to die than for my melee line at this point. We can let the gunners mostly die and replenish them another time, essentially. In the center here, these enemy cav charge right through my bow samurai and into the weaker bows. So I then commit my half-dead weak troops at the back to attack. This is a massive freeze caused by me going to answer the door or something. And there we go. Now our 2 units with like 20 guys in them will fight that enemy general. With all the support from things nearby, the hope is that they won't die too much, and their bonus against the general should allow them to do some damage. We do have some bad fights going on as I attempt to use my Yumi Ashigaru as melee units facing enemy samurai, but that's just what we got. We've at least got some other things that are going better, like this cav raid on the enemy's back lines. They had plenty of Ashigaru archers for us to kill, and we do a rear attack on some of their units, including those samurai attacking my Yumi Ashigaru. Although they were Yari samurai, I think, so my general's charge won't do much. Where it's just some militia units, they'll rout. Those enemy Yumi Ashigaru do rout as well, and now we've got this thing in the bag as the balance bar gradually swings in our favour. And we didn't lose any units, we actually did it. We again took like 20% casualties, we're even closer to destruction, but we're still alive. We still have the potential to have lost nothing if we can fully replenish after this little campaign. Now back to the action. We need to go after this final castle, and we need to most importantly not take our nearly dead units. I'm going for an auto-resolve here, and auto-resolve tends to distribute casualties very evenly among the army. So you need to make sure dead units or nearly dead units aren't there, because they'll take proportionally higher losses if every unit just loses 30 men, for example, and that can cause them to be deleted. So we go and set the siege. I've got a few reinforcement units who come over as well, and that makes the balance bar much better because we're adding hundreds of trash units, and sheer numbers makes up for a lot of the strength on the balance bar, meaning we can take a pretty decent auto-resolve where we're not going to lose very much of each unit, and no units are lost. So we have finally done it. The castle is taken, all of the enemy armies in this area are down, and we're going to get the chance to get all of our troops back after that, very, very slowly because of the mod's effects on replenishment, but it's possible in principle. An ideal target for us right now would be the Yamana, the faction to our northeast right here, because they control a stretch of the coast going down towards the east that we could take without it being exposed to other factions. They're allied though to the Ashikaga Shogunate, my ally, and a major faction at the other end of my little strip of territory. To actually get this Yamana thing going, I bribed the Ashikaga Shogunate into breaking their alliance. I didn't think that would actually work, but funnily enough I did get enough money to be able to convince them of this. You can see that while they do have 3 units of tercios between those 2 armies, it's mostly militia, so it's mostly stuff we can rout, meaning that while they have a lot of stuff here, realistically we won't have to fight most of it because they're going to run away on the battlefield. So with that, I'm happy enough to go in and get this siege draw out going. There's this old exploit in Shogun 2, where if you move a unit close to a ranged unit but just out of its range, it will keep moving forwards to try and get into range. So if you walk away at about the same speed as they're walking towards you, they'll keep walking towards you and they won't go back, whereas if you run away, they will realise you've got too far away and they'll go back to their place in the formation. So using this kind of fishing technique, you can get a few units to come forward. So here we get about half the enemy archers to go out ahead of the enemy army, and now we can face them in a skirmish where we have the advantage because our archers get to shoot first and we have our guns in front of the archers putting volleys into them as well. Soon enough though it does get started because the AI kind of detects that it has a range disadvantage and just goes for it with the charge. So now we face a melee across the line, but we've got lots of nice fights like here, our Naginata warrior monks versus the enemy's Yari militia. We're going to absolutely annihilate them. The only places we'll have trouble are where the Portuguese troops are filtering in because they are much better than my troops. A lot of my troops are only Yari Ashigaru and things like that who aren't very good. We don't even have samurai who are able to at least match the Portuguese. Here's an example of us getting annihilated. We've killed like a couple of the enemies, but they're absolutely decimating our unit as they face them, so this is bad news. The only upside to this situation is that when they're stuck in melee, we can shoot them, and while they have really high armor, and armor does give you an armor save against gunshots, it's just less likely to work than for bows, so guns can actually kill Portuguese troops, bows can't really at all. And there we go, we're into the castle. So that's phase 1 of our Yamana War done. Now we have to watch this reinforcement army and see what it does. While we wait, the Miura thing starts happening. They declare war on us just as that intel predicted. Now they're not that strong with only one region, but because of how the AI's funding works, they do have 2 armies, meaning they'll outnumber us on that front. Handily though, they don't attack us in their first turn of the war, they're just standing there. And during the next end turn sequence, the Miura do attack that castle on our front line with 2 stacks of mostly trash, but it's not pure trash. They do have about 1 stack's worth of regular Ashigaru as opposed to militia, and a couple of good units mixed in there as well. As for the Yamana, they haven't come at us again, so I decided to now get going towards them. As for the Miura, the army that went away comes back and attacks our vassal, doing a siege draw-out. In fact, our vassal is poorly deployed here. But we do have the chance here to participate in the battle and make this go our way. But broadly speaking, our allies' troops are just straight up worse than what the enemy have, so they are going to die. But yes, a few of the enemy came over to fight with me at my line, and this is perfect because a few units can't beat us in a skirmish, although they may try, like these Onobushi. They're going to benefit from having a high armor stat, so they resist arrow fire. There's a nice example right here where we absolutely pepper them with arrows and you see a massive cloud come in, but it just doesn't do that much because a lot of the arrows go through the models and don't count because of that armor save. And that's what makes those Portuguese really strong, because that will just happen to all arrows because their armor's almost at the maximum allowed. Meanwhile, the main fight for us is about to start as the very diminished enemy force forms up right in front of us. Not going to be too much to this one, because we can just win with brute force with our melee line being better. You can see I wasn't being very good about counter-charging here. It's always hard to remember because in different Total War games it changes whether or not it's a good idea to charge enemies that are charging you, but in Shogun 2 I'm pretty sure it is always a good idea to give the orders at the last second and charge out so that you get a charge bonus as well as them, giving you a few extra kills. Once we're in combat it will be nice and easy to win. A lot of the enemy units already have very tired or exhausted level stamina, and while the game revels in not telling you what that actually means, it does mean quite a lot. I seem to remember. It's one of the major factors that determines combat skill, which is why it's strange the game doesn't tell you that. Basically, it gives you an enormous debuff if you have low stamina, so we can easily destroy units by just running into them and routing them off the field. Considering we also sacrificed a bunch of Uragami troops fighting the Amiko, so far they've been a pretty good vassal for us, and they don't get anything in return so far, so that's a pretty cheap deal. Now we do get an ambush against the Yamana, but not the one I was going for. They sent their little group outside the castle down the road. So we ambush them, and that's just an auto-resolve, we can easily wipe them out. Now back to the Miura stuff. As mentioned, we can counter-attack now that they're severely weakened after their recent defeats. We are going to lose about a third of our troops in that battle, which is a little bit nasty because, as I keep mentioning, getting troops back is harder in this mod than it is usually. So now our army's in a weakened state, and we do need to go on to attack the Miura again to finish the war. There was a sally at that Yamana Castle siege. The balance bar is even, but this could be a little bit misleading because our force is quite heavily split. It's in a sort of 1/3, 2/3 setup, meaning while we're going to have an easy chance to surround the enemy, we need to be careful here to actually get everything fighting at the same time. Otherwise, each group will have a local disadvantage. Now we are going to have issues because some of the assaulting enemy infantry are the Portuguese, and they are going to make short work of everything they touch. Even these Yari retainers are going to die to the last man as the Portuguese come in, and we're inflicting very little damage back on them just because they have really high stats. As I said, they're kind of a post-game unit in terms of their balancing. They're extremely good and don't cost very much to upkeep. Really what's happening in this battle is defined by where our smaller army is at the moment. and they're almost arriving at the battle. The enemy did throw some more generals back our way from their 5 or 6 generals that they had, and that held us up because we had to stop to fight them. They were all good fights where our spears were fighting their heavy cav, but it's just delaying us arriving to the back of the enemy's main line and helping out. Really, we're just trying to grab enough army losses here to get rid of these Portuguese units as they gradually hack through my archers, who are at this stage just going to have to be sacrificed to buy time. It'll take a while for the enemy to kill them, and in the meantime we are killing other things elsewhere. Here's an example of me using bow warrior monks against the tercios, and more importantly an example of how that doesn't do anything. You can see the arrows just shoot into the models and it has no effect, they kind of phase through them. I think I did see one enemy go down to these archer attacks here, but basically their nearly maxed out armor stat means they're sort of invulnerable to ranged fire. I used to think that armor didn't protect you against gun attacks, but they added a unit into the game that was called Bulletproof Samurai or something, and it just had really high armor, just like the tercios. So I think that armor can also deflect gun attacks, it's just less likely to do it. What the chances are is another thing that's just all unknown. We lost a couple of full units there, which is nasty. Going to be pretty difficult to get them back, especially out here where we don't have the buildings readily available. However, the enemy army was also trashed. They now have virtually nothing left in the siege, so to finish this little bit off, here's the auto-resolve where I took them out for good. With the Miura, we just needed to push on and attack their castle, but it is a decent castle, and there's a substantial garrison there that has a lot of presence on the balance bar, so I didn't just sweep in and auto-resolve like I thought I might be able to do. Instead, I decided to leave them under siege and see if they would sally at least. But here we are at the start of the next turn, that didn't happen. What did happen though, was the rest of the Yamana's territory is gone. Our ally, the Hatakeyama, have come in and conquered them. So that's that, the war is suddenly over, and we actually don't really benefit fully from having defeated the Yamana, which is pretty annoying. Since the Miura didn't sally against us, I thought, well, we have to attack. We're going to take winter attrition if we sit here besieging them. So I thought, well, let's just auto-resolve this. Even though this is not a good auto-resolve at all, we will win because we have the advantage. We lose a whole bunch of Ashigaru, including a few full units, and that's that. Just kind of taking the loss to avoid the tedium of doing that in real life, really. And you could argue that the losses don't matter because that's the war won. Now we can sit here and just recruit those 3 units again and replenish the other ones. Unless that army has to fight again in the near future. And as it turns out, in this very turn, the Mori declare war on us. I don't have any intel on what the Mori have, but I just thought it's probably going to win, so I just leave the castle, then spend some time killing these Miura rebels who were hanging around. There's no real point in doing this, but they were just there. Afterwards, I started thinking I could set up on that bridge. It's also not a particularly good place to defend if the enemy just have better stuff than us, but unlike the castle, we can retreat from it if we want, so we're not going to get trapped defending that position in principle. So, what do the Mori have for us in their all-important turn? First, they tried to take one of my trade nodes up to the north. I confidently thought, well, we already know that a trade ship can beat a Bokaboya, but it can't beat a Mori Bokaboya. They are the naval specialist faction and their ships have bigger and better crews. So actually we get annihilated real fast and we lose that trade node. But more importantly, those armies we saw down on the southern coast do come over and attack this castle. Basically, while it doesn't really look like it, the enemy are taking enormous casualties climbing up those walls, and somewhere in the background our archers are grabbing a few kills as well, and it's actually going okay. However, they do deploy a unit of dismounted Portuguese cav, and these guys are going to be a real pain because we don't have anything that can kill them. So they climb up into the castle and start just hacking their way through our troops. And yes, elsewhere, the walls are kind of holding, and it definitely makes me think if I had actually left the army here, we would have done okay. The enemy are really struggling to get into this inner part of the castle, and if I hadn't installed that stupid Portuguese submod, this wouldn't be happening either, as this one unit gradually kills everything. Unfortunately, we lose control of the towers, so that's our main way to kill the Portuguese god, and things get worse after this. In terms of a last stand, that was pretty damn good. We killed like half of them. We would have killed nothing at all if I'd auto-resolved that, so that was really good. That's going to severely dampen their offensive momentum, just what we needed. There we see my Amiko vassals just die instantly when they try to attack the Mori, but at least they revealed that there are 2 Mori armies on that border, and that's probably what our main force on the northern coast is going to have to worry about. Now in the Mori turn, they storm forwards and attack our vassal, but they don't attack me, so that's nice. And if you look very closely, you'll see our vassal lose their territory in their turn, meaning they tried to sally and failed so hard they lost their territory. So, great work to the Amiko. They were a truly useless vassal in comparison to the Uragami at least. And now the Mori are right here with their 2 stacks. The flags being in good condition means the sally didn't do any significant damage to the enemy, and now we have to deal with this. Down south, I'm going to double down on my falling back strategy and actually fall back all the way past Himeji Castle with this army. The reason for that is that the next castle down the road has the onsen special building, which improves replenishment ever so slightly, albeit if I can upgrade it, it would be more substantial. But I thought I would at least try to use it to accelerate our replenishment and get that army back to strength. In the next Mori turn, they've got an attack for us again. They do come along the southern road and go for this next castle. While this castle is inferior to the previous one, it's only a fort. I still thought we probably should do this manually and grab some more kills, especially after how successful it was last time. Here I am a bit later, admiring the harvest, watching the enemies fall as they try to climb, and you can see there's a nice pile of bodies on the ground. We really have racked up the kills, so let's see how many, excusing the recording start notification that somehow made it into the recording this time. We got like 2,000 kills of the enemy's 3,500. That again was really good. We've severely weakened their invasion, taking out 5,000 of the initial 6,000 that came in exchange for 2 territories. Now up north, the Mori came and attacked, and that was another case where I could have manually resolved it, but I just could not be bothered. I'm not sure if this is a better idea than actually defending. It almost certainly isn't actually. However, it does mean that the next thing will happen this turn, so it speeds things up and it's very decisive. So yes, we move out, and now our 2 armies that aren't quite at full strength but are still decent together will be able to face down one of the enemy's armies, and it's the weaker one first, which is perfect. So we'll try to sweep them away, ready to fight the good army afterwards. Anyway, once they get close, we can just send forward all the melee units using the new sprint ability I've unlocked in the tech tree, which makes our charge a bit more powerful, and we'll slam into them. In some cases it's just our Ashikaga fighting theirs, nothing special and no particular advantage, but in other places we're fighting militia, or we've got cases where it's our samurai / warrior monks fighting in the front line, and there we'll have an advantage. So overall, on average, I think we have an advantage with just a straight up grind along the line. Plus we still have the archers, who may or may not be actually shooting at something as that fight goes on. Our cav can swoop in and deal with the remaining enemy archers, and with that the fight is won. Now we could go for a castle assault with our superior numbers, but it's probably still going to be a bad idea. Now on our southern road front, I move forward to hopefully attack the Mori while they're still weak from their previous battles against me. They're not that weak, we can't just come in and auto-resolve or something, it's still a balanced setup between the 2 armies. They then, a couple of turns later actually, after nothing happens in both of the sieges, they take out one of my trading nodes, and more importantly, they do sally. So we've got a sally going with their main army up north, their better army, and it's a real both sides run at each other sort of affair. They've got some good archers and some gunners shooting at me, I can do the same to them, but neither side's going to bother with the skirmishing, we're just going to run at each other. Well, that makes things go a little bit faster at least. As for this fight that's going to start, well, both sides are kind of matched. Our troops and their troops are just a mix of Ashikaga with the odd good unit in there, and I think some militia on their side as well. But we do have numbers on our side. You can see we extend out to the right around the enemy line, so I'm focusing here on getting units into the back to begin rear attacks. And here comes the killing blow as well. Our rear attack is ready. Our infantry have gradually wheeled around to be behind the enemy's centre. Now we charge in and start picking up the routes and getting kills on the charge bonus. And as we go in, that actually just finishes the battle because everything chain routes all at once, the enemy general dying there in the cav battle on the left. A very sudden end to the battle and a decisive victory. I just ended the battle right away, no point pursuing. And the game was generous, it just kind of deleted everything that was on the field, even though they were doing okay against us in that very moment. and we get a really good result with pretty much all of the enemies dead. But we did lose 2,000 troops because, as I said, those fights weren't going that well for us. Still, we're out of here, we win on morale. The 4 troops left over from the enemy army die in the next turn to that auto-resolve, and we've taken back one of the castles we sacrificed. It's still worth going for at least the next castle. I leave a few damaged units behind for public order and to protect them from being lost in this ensuing battle, and that balance bar is good enough to get a decent enough victory, a couple of hundred casualties but no units lost, and boom, the castle is taken. Thus we've gained the territory of our old Amico vassal thanks to the Mori, and the question will be, can we keep going? Obviously we're even more weak, and it's further on to the next castle, but if we can punish the enemy more, we might as well. Previously we also set up a siege on our southern front, hoping to punish the enemy for losing pretty much all of their troops, taking our 2 castles that we sacrificed. And here they're sallying against the guys I've sent to do that siege. This was one of the cases where I nearly fought it because that balance bar is not very good, and then I couldn't be bothered, so I did auto-resolve it. The result was nothing too special, nothing that bad either. Most importantly though, the enemy are mostly dead, so we'll come back to that for another auto-resolve and finish them off. So we take back that castle, but I want at least the next one, which also used to be ours. However, this place was defended by a full stack when the garrison is included, and of the troops we can see, they are good ones as well. We have a stack that is very much filled with bad troops and also not filled because they're all lacking strength. With that in mind, I decided to actually not try and rampage forwards. I'm going to use these forces defensively. I'll pretty much just sit around here and distract the enemy and hold on if they attack. And I'm going to have the 2 northern armies be our main offensive weapon against the Mori, presuming that there is nothing up there to stop them, that is. As it happens, we do find out that the next place has nothing to stop them. Moving on, we do make that capture. There we go, and this is a particularly good capture, not only because we're getting some national renown, but this place has a gold mine, so while it's not a particularly developed place, it makes us a relatively large amount of money, so a nice place to hold on to. Then, in the next turn, well, we learn that the next castle down the road is also undefended, and we can also reach it in one turn again. This region's a bit different though, because now we're not in a choke point anymore. You can see there's another road going to the south coast from here, so it's less easy to storm forward with all of our troops combined. And for that reason, I'm going to go for the vassalization here with the Mogami. Because by making a vassal at the end of the choke-pointed part, they will then be a buffer. Mori has to declare war on them to come at me from the west now, which they may well do, but if they don't, then this situation remains a choke point. It just turns around and now it's that little southern mountain pass that is the choke point. Therefore, I can send all of my troops in that direction and feel relatively confident about not being rear attacked or anything like that. Having a look forwards, we can see the next castle does have a load of troops, as does the castle after that to the west. So going further with our increasingly damaged army is starting to feel risky. Especially because this first army in particular is packed out with samurai. This isn't trash anymore, this is quite the opposite. I checked to see if the Mori would take peace right now, and they would. With that in mind, I started thinking, well, there's no point getting peace until we're really dead, as in we can't fight anymore. And our troops kind of have one battle left in them if we combine everything together. The AI can't cancel an attack once it's tried to make it from a siege, so it'll try to attack the one unit, see our other units, and even if that would be a balance bar they don't want to go for, they're kind of forced to go for it anyway, because as I said, they can't then not attack in the way that a player can after seeing what the battle is going to be. And that is what happens. Here we go. We get a slightly advantageous balance bar, and perhaps most importantly, we're bringing all of these good units out of that castle and into the field where they're probably going to be easier to kill. I decided to select all of my katana run-in and charge them towards the enemy. At about this time, the enemy were inching forwards, ready to attack me, and we're just going to preempt them by attacking them first. And in fact, this went much better than I expected in other ways, because the enemy archers didn't skirmish away. We ended up, along a lot of the line, actually getting our katana Ronin into combat with the enemy archers. And then the nearby melee units, mostly those Nodaichi samurai, kind of get drawn in and are simply unable to charge. So that's absolutely perfect. Both the archers and the Nodaichi samurai have taken very unfavourable fights right there, and that constitutes the majority of the enemy army. I've got my second line here ready to mop up after the katana Ronin die. And I was like, actually, this is going okay. We can just charge in right now. No point waiting for them to die or tire the enemy out or anything like that. And overall, this goes very well. You can see on the balance bar, we are now slaughtering them in this melee. We're going to be taking enormous losses right along the line as well, because all of our Ashikaga troops are still going to be worse than the things they're facing head on. But our various advantages are going to be enough. Looks like there were some Portuguese troops here in the centre. That's a dangerous opponent, but they're going to rout due to army losses at about this time. Still, we kill a lot of stuff, and here's the final result. We lost 1,000 troops. The enemy lost 1,800. Not that many more, but the stuff they were losing is more valuable than what we were losing. We did take a turn of winter attrition, so we're weaker than we were at the end of that previous battle. And in fact, in this leading army, you can see I have one unit of Katana Ronin that only has 6 guys in it. I should have paid more attention to that, because they get deleted in the auto-resolve. In fact, we lost 1 guy, and that 1 guy was in that unit by the looks of things. So that was some very bad luck, or some very bad use of units by our auto-resolve general. But we do have the castle, comes with another holy site which acts as a monastery for us. And actually, because that last battle went better than I thought it was going to, I'm not going to go right ahead and get peace to try and replenish here. I was looking around and thinking, you know what, I don't think the Mori can dislodge me if they attack, so we might as well just keep the war going to give us more options. Now in the next turn, the Mori basically didn't do anything against us that turn, but one thing they did do is move their force out of the castle down on the southern front where I was defending against a possible attack. So with that, as you can see, we can storm forwards with our defending troops, who have had a couple of turns of replenishment waiting around as well, and retake this castle, thus restoring our pre-war border with the Mori. So the southern front's now at least neutral. There was this additional castle, which is really in a thorn-in-your-side position. It's way off-road, so we have to send troops to go in that direction separately to our main attacking campaign right here. I use these ships to scout out the castle I need to take to unite the fronts, and we can see there is a full stack right there. Most of the troops that were defending that castle I just took must be in that stack. Then the Mori main force goes after my scouting militia. It does chase them down, which means the unit is dead. But this is just what we needed in this situation. Those 2 armies have now walked through the forest off-road, and that probably takes up a whole load of their movement points, and means they can't attack us this turn. I don't know if it actually does mean that, but whatever the case, they don't attack us this turn, so we are fine to have left the castle mostly undefended. Now, with these guys coming in from the west, the smaller army just simply moves in to support this siege, getting close enough to the besieging force. And I quickly discovered we can be very offensive this turn, because my force under our faction leader can actually reach both of the castles in our back lines this turn. So first I move over to help with this battle here, just doing this as an auto-resolve to spread those casualties out, and we do get a good result. So there's that castle taken out, along with a very good army inside actually. And now I can go and attack the other castle right away, which is great. The 2 armies together easily auto-resolve that castle as well, and just like that, the war situation is simplified. Now the Mori are just to our left. Even if they do take back the castle I left behind, this is a better situation, I think, and we'd be sacrificing 1 castle to take 2, of course. However, they don't attack it this turn. I think their little reinforcement army probably didn't make it into range, so the AI is waiting until next turn so it can use all its troops for the assault. But that's perfect for us because we can rush over with some of the closer stuff and get into range of the castle with a load of reinforcements. Once I got everything together that I could, I decided to actually just sally out and see if we could fight them in the field, because well, that's probably worse than waiting for them to attack the castle. It's not like we need the castle in this situation. We have enough strength to actually just beat them in a field battle and then move on this turn to get some momentum. They've left behind a lot of units to rush me on the hill here, and I do have 2 armies worth of stuff and the hill advantage, so overall not that bad. As for my other set of reinforcements, they are going to be fighting because the enemy sent these Lance Cav, Portuguese Lance Cav specifically, to fight them. I can swarm them with my anti-cav units, so that's okay. But just because these guys are a very good unit, it's going to take a while to kill them. Although the Lance Cav are specifically anti-cav cav, so they're not going to be all that good against us. They've also now started firing the mangonel towards this group, and we're just going to take those shots right now, not an enormous amount we can do. The fight over here on the hill is now starting, and things are okay, but not actually that optimal. If I was a bit further forward, this would be better. The enemy start to fall back, and with the warrior monks popping out the war cry, we can get rid of the real trash like militia basically instantly, barely even having to kill any of them. So that breaks that part of the line. We can get their archers into a melee as well. I've got one unit in the middle of the enemy's reinforcements. I rushed them forward to take out the enemy's mangonel, but it does mean they're now essentially a sacrifice to everything else that's around them. Meanwhile, we have very slowly taken out the Portuguese cav over there. It's been taking quite a while, but we are winning. And now we can start bringing our initial units over to help with this second phase of the fight. Although, the enemy send these Turthos to come and distract me, so I have to stop to unleash all the arrows and guns I can on these guys, and even that isn't quite enough to stop them just running into our line on their own. As for the other fight, you can see my strategy here is to run away. We're basically just fleeing and taking casualties rapidly as the enemy reinforcements overwhelm my out of formation groups. After I withdrew some units or got some units completely destroyed, I've got more guys coming on as reinforcements, so suddenly we have more stuff over there. Plus I'm just still distracting the enemy, like right there, those Portuguese troops chasing my Ashigaru. We'll just chase them to the edge, the Ashigaru can withdraw, and we've kept that good enemy unit out of the fight for a long time. And the enemy are getting tired of this, it's causing a chain rout. A few of their units came over to fight my main army in the middle now and died, and that was enough to tip them over the army losses, morale debuff, and that's getting rid of everything else. Looks like their general was having no luck still against my monks who were gradually killing him. Here is the final result. Things went pretty well. We killed about 3 times as many enemies as we took casualties ourselves, only 1 full unit lost, and overall, Mori are now in even more trouble. We end up with a pretty fine situation. I could just auto-resolve that right now, but I didn't. I don't know why I was being so cautious about this, because that balance spell was fine to auto-resolve for nearly free. Maybe it was because I had more units on the way, but I actually left it this turn. But before we get back to that siege, this other siege happened at the far end of our territory. Looks like that cheeky monk right there has caused a rebellion, so now I have to fight these Buddhist Ashigaru. So they come up and then I throw over my samurai units to defend the very top of the wall, so they take attrition on the 2 climbs. And by the time they've done the climbs, they're really tired, and our fresh samurai will annihilate them in melee as they gradually come over the wall. And with that, that's all we need really. We're just going to be taking out enemy units one by one as they come up. Soon everything's gone except for this one unit, which we can see running off across the countryside. They're not routed in this case, they're just going on an adventure. I think the AI just sort of died again and decided to start giving some random orders. So that's the end of that, a heroic victory. We have managed to defeat the rebels and hold on to this castle. It was a pretty good move from the Mori to try that, but it seems the game just doesn't have the ability to overcome its own defenses. Now we're back with the main force, doing the auto-resolve that, as I said, I'm pretty sure we could have done last turn. I think I've thrown a couple more units into this group since last turn, but this would have been fine. I move right on towards the next castle, which I've already scouted and doesn't look particularly heavily defended. I had some reinforcements coming down the northern main road, and I thought with these guys we'll go through our vassals' territory and set up for an attack from the other side, so the enemy might get distracted and move their main force west, and then we can sweep in east, and I'm going to send a couple more units from that little reserve group I just clicked on as well. And then back to the siege with all of the stuff built up there. The auto-resolve was fine, and there we go, we take another castle, leaving the Mori with just 2 territories at this point. We pretty much have them. There's only one potential worry about going for this one before the other one, and that is it technically gives us a land border with the next faction, because there is a land crossing here. And that might mean the AI thinks, ooh, I've got another opponent, and we get invaded from Shikoku immediately. Luckily, we survive at least a turn without that happening, leaving us with this siege attack. I can't use my 3rd army, but if I did, this would just be an auto-resolve. And in the spirit of having a climactic final showdown, I thought we'll actually do this attack, because it will allow me to use the Mori's captured mangonel against them while they're trapped inside their own castle. My grand plan failed miserably right away, like any good plan. Because as it turns out, the range on a mangonel is not great enough to shoot between the deployment zone in a siege and the castle, and they can't move, meaning they're actually really bad for sieges unless the map happens to let you deploy close enough to the castle, and on this map in particular, this is the closest point. Actually, all of the deployment zone was really far away. There were also archers here, but they're low-level archers, and guns slightly outrange low-level archers, so I can gradually kill them for free. This is very inefficient because most of my shots are going to be missing, so we'll use up a ton of ammo just to kill a few enemy archers, but once that's done, we get some freedom. We can move archers to be right up next to the wall, and they can arc shots in to start depleting the defenders before we have to go in ourselves. Here's their general, who stood right next to where the archers were, and does not seem to mind. Sometimes the AI does run away when you start shooting them, and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know how it makes the decision, but clearly it can just take the shots, and here is an irresistible screenshot, speaking of taking shots, as the enemy general just gets annihilated by a huge barrage of arrows, and basically now we're just going to grind them to death. We easily have enough numbers to win. We're just going to take disproportionate losses because the enemy can't rout and we have to kill them a lot. We're done, and the Mori are done too. We completed a mission to kill a general that I apparently had. The realm divide is approaching by the looks of things. We're actually almost there, which is a bit awkward, but we'll have to deal with that as it comes. And there's the confirmation message I was looking for. The Mori are gone, and we are now at peace. We have no enemies right now, and you can see on the diplomacy map at the top there that going to the left is kind of the next logical move for us, especially with Realm Divide approaching. One thing we'll need to do is see what we're up against. So I sent a ninja to scout out the coast here, and we see some Ryozoji armies and a massive death blob of Shimazu armies. As you can see on the mini-map, the island is split between these two factions, and the Shimazu are probably going to win the war between them. They are at war with each other. So that actually gave me an incentive to attack sooner rather than later, because if we attack now, we might be able to take advantage of the Shimazu probably killing some of the Ryozoji forces while we attack them from the other side. Now we want to attack the castle first, of course, to effectively cancel out that nice powerful army inside. Then our second wave pushes the reinforcements away. That might be enough in other circumstances, but the army inside the castle is quite good, so we can't just use our 2 sacks to auto-resolve it or anything right here. They did absolutely nothing in their turn, so we move up, clear out their reinforcements who just run away, and that gives us a really good balance bar for the siege, an unexpectedly good one actually, so we can just delete all of those nice units for free, which is a great start to this conflict. We can take out the upper half stack of troops this turn, since both of our support armies could reach it and had already retreated. And that's another nice deletion of some good units, thanks to the fact that auto-resolves are kind of generous when you have a big advantage. It just gives you a couple of casualties on every unit, you'll just replenish them in a turn, and that's that, the enemy army is gone. We've now simplified our war with the Ryozoji because they can only attack us through the snaking route along the north of the island, which is mostly choke pointed off by castles, so that'll keep things nice and simple. And one of those castles is this one right here, and our main force moves out to take that right now. So yes, now the Ryozoji are going to really struggle to counter-attack us, even if they do have troops left over from whatever the Shimazu are doing to them. The main force carries on to the next castle. This one had a little stack outside, but I've actually got night attack on this guy. Since he's max level, I've managed to get all of the decent skills on him, so we can do that attack for free. Had the chance to make a vassal, and I thought, well, I will make a vassal here because this is kind of an interesting choke point. There is actually a route to this castle just to the left, to the north of those mountains. So this is a little strategic plug where no matter what happens in northwest Kyushu, we can fall back to northeast Kyushu and be safe in our little domain and lock in place the stuff we've got so far. And we might need to go back if public order gets bad, of course. Now that rebellion has to now attack all of those little groups of troops because while I'm stuck in their zone of control, they're also stuck in my zone of control, so they have to do this. We do not have to fight them, however, and I'm not going to do that here. Even though I could sacrifice these units to try and whittle the enemy down, I thought, no, I'll run away and try to avoid battle, because if we do lose the castle, they can come along to team up for a castle retaking mission. Since there's not much going on with the Ryozoji, I could take 2 stacks forward and go for the next castle. Nothing there, so that's an auto-resolve. I think the Shimazu probably have the enemy quite distracted, and or they don't have any men left. Our next castle that we need to target is defended, both by a full stack and some stuff in front, the zone of control of which actually stopped me from going around to besiege the castle to do the usual trick on these guys outside. However, we can do the unusual trick of night attack, which achieves the exact same thing without any second force required. So, our main army comes in to wipe out that little line of militia units, then the second army comes in to take out the other, even smaller group of militia units, and with that, we're in business. And we get that balance bar, and that's another situation where it's like, yep, I'll just delete those good units, all those samurai, all those long Yari Ashigaru can just be ignored, and boom. With this, the Ryozoji somehow still have one stack left over there. They did have quite a lot of stuff, but it seems inevitable that our 3 stacks will be able to push through and take what remains of that territory. I can even attack right now, but I didn't want to, since that one army on its own would be vulnerable. So here we are next turn. A whole bunch more stuff has appeared after I besieged the castle, but since the enemy's main stack, which did come over to help, gets pushed away by our sheer dominance, everything in the castle can just be killed with this auto-resolve. This is going well, we're auto-resolving our way to victory. A classic getting towards the late game campaign Total War situation. But of course with Realm Divide, that won't be the case forever. I actually take their other castle in this very same turn, using the old trick of sending the generals out ahead of the army to get a tiny bit more movement and battle range out of one of our stacks. So that's that really for the Ryozoji. Their remaining territory is down in amongst the Shimazu stuff, so that's probably not going to do very well. There was though the matter of this remaining army. This battle wasn't quite an auto-resolve, because of the Shimazu actually. While auto-resolving that would probably be fine, I want to totally minimize losses because I want to attack the Shimazu as soon as possible. So the enemy have to split up to attack my 2 armies, and essentially we're going to get plenty of free surrounds. And now I can just micro things to get the orders going. You might note, like right there was something, if you were listening very closely, where I tried to give an attack order and the first 2 times I gave it, it counted as a move order. That's because when you play on slow motion, I think it reduces the quote-unquote tick rate of the game, the rate at which it updates what's happening on the battlefield, and also the rate at which it accepts inputs. So on slow motion, I think you can only have half the maximum APM. And that does quite regularly while I'm playing, actually cause orders to be missed or movement orders to go to the wrong place because it doesn't pick up the end of you dragging the mouse or something like that. A very strange sounding problem that does actually happen in most battles, as a little fun aside. Maybe it's just happening to me because my PC is not very good at this. There's an example right here actually in this bit of the footage where I tried to give an attack order with some archers and it at first made it a move order to walk across the field. We lost like 10-15% casualties, but we should be able to get that back while we walk over to prepare for the next war, which, as alluded to, will be against the Shimazu. We don't want to waste any time. In the Ryozoji turn, they offer me a peace deal, and I was like, well, I might as well, because actually you're really just going to get conquered by the Shimazu anyway, so I'll take some money off you in exchange for the deal and even try to make you my vassal. And the question is, how much money can we get with this? So I start gradually negotiating up and up and up, and to cut this long story short, I got as high as 35,000 before I got to the point where I couldn't be bothered to micromanage the amount to get the specific level they would offer. So we get that free money off them for a relatively pointless peace treaty. However, it has this effect. We become the tallest tree, and now the axes are coming for us in this weirdly laggy Realm Divide cutscene. Yes, doing that vassalization must have tipped me over the edge. I didn't realize I was that close. I figured this would happen while I was on Kyushu, but I thought I could get halfway through the Shimazu first or something. But no, we are going to Realm Divide right now, meaning my new vassal, the Ryozoji, immediately declares war on me. Now there's this kind of secret advantage to how this happened, because the Ryozoji are near the end of the turn order, so the Realm Divide has happened when only a couple of factions are left to declare war on me this turn. So actually I get to go through next turn with only a little bit of the realm divided against me, giving me a tiny bit of time to prepare for this. A subtle advantage against triggering the realm divide in your own turn by doing a conquest, and then in the end turn sequence everyone immediately declares war on you. Not much difference. Either way, we're going to be at war with pretty much everyone real soon. So this is where the campaign really begins, or really ends indeed. The first thing we need to do in reaction to this is start spending that massive pile of money we just took off the Ryozoji. Now that I have conquered some stuff in Kyushu, my unit caps have increased a bit, so I can throw out a couple of new units around the place. So I'm recruiting stuff off to the right hand side of our territory ready to use. No matter what happens over there, if we have just Kyushu by the end of all this, that's still a better strategic situation because we can focus our forces down. And obviously, fighting lots of factions at once means you're fighting lots of unit caps at once. We have one faction's worth of units, they're gonna have like 30 factions worth of units, so the only possible way to overcome that strength is to strategically choke point everything. And with that we take down a whole bunch of Ashigaru troops as well. There's also another Shimazu army nearby, but with all of my men grouped together here, not too worried about that. So we're going to try and kind of death ball our way across Shimazu's territory as fast as possible, but public order will mean that's going to be much harder for us than it would be if we were playing as a normal faction, so it's not necessarily going to happen. As we come to the end of the major factions part of the end turn sequence, we are going to have a delay because that Shimazu army comes to attack my group, but only 2 of my armies are in range, so we do need to face them down here. We've got cav coming in on the left, including loads of those generals, but I've got 2 spear units ready to deal with that. And on the right, we're not so engaged. You can see I'm forming an echelon there. We're going to be able to outflank the enemy right away, which will help out. And here they are, charging into my line, which in many cases are in Yariwall formation to enhance their power. There are some explosions. I've got some fireball throwers just behind this right side who are going to somewhat damage the enemy and probably somewhat damage us as well. Here was a nice engagement down in the middle. We've got our 1 unit of veteran Yari Ashigaru from the very beginning of the game still alive, and they in Yari Wall formation are super powerful. I don't have the formation thick enough for the full effect there, but a long Yari Ashigaru unit is functionally invincible in Yari Wall formation because the enemy's attack animations can't play and your attack animations go really fast because it's kind of weird and probably unbalanced undeliberately. Everything on the right got shot from behind by my archers. And in the centre, our Yari walls did well. You can see piles of enemy bodies in front of our men. Even without the Yari walls, our Naginata walls did a similar thing as well. So here's the final result we get to. We did take moderate losses along the line, and a couple of units are particularly damaged, including the one that got firebombed. But overall, that's good stuff. The Shimazu's leadership are gone, and that's going to clear a path for us to go down towards that nice castle. There's the easy capture on Kumamoto Castle, so now we've got our nice, unique defensive position at a very big choke point. But the thing is, I figured I'd be taking this and then facing some more stuff that was just in the fog of war, because I had seen many Shimazu stacks before the war. But looking around, there's not that much that can counterattack, or anything really. So with that in mind, my big plan to win some sort of decisive defensive battle at that castle went out the window, and we'll just have to keep going. We are though under threat on the other side of the island, where we have a much less substantial defense, but I have put some units there thinking something like this might happen, and since I need to control public order, I actually have some units pretty much everywhere at this point. In the meantime, in this very same turn, we can move out and attack the next Shimazu castle down the western coast. Much less exciting than the previous one, but if it's not going to be attacked, that's not going to be a problem. And I did have a vassal opportunity, which I took, with the same kind of reasoning as one I did with the Mogami before. Because we're at a fork in the road, putting a vassal on one of the forks means we can send all of our troops now to go east and take the little area that connects the east and west parts of the island. The Shimazu in the east do attack that castle. Anyway, so the enemy are piling into the castle all around, and we're going to be doing a not defending the walls kind of strategy. Just going to fall back and have Yari walls and stuff towards the capture point, and we'll try and do the old fishing hook reel-in thing with the enemy's archers to force them to climb into the castle as well, otherwise they will just snipe me. The enemy have got this big blob going over here where my dying garrison, who I'm willing to just sacrifice, have kept the enemy grouped together, perfect for me to then throw in a couple of volleys of firebombs and just level absolutely everything. Obviously going to be leveling a few of my own troops, but more of the enemy given their concentration, so that's probably helping. And of course, garrison units just come back to life at the end of the fight, so it doesn't matter if we blow them up. Good bit of necromancy and a good bit of explosive chemistry working to our favour here. Actually went surprisingly well. We did heavy damage to the enemy, losing just one unit who will now immediately be risen from the dead, and will be fine after that. We move on eastwards. There's a small group in the way. They move back, and they move back to be in range of the next castle, which has a full stack inside. So if I attack again, this is potential for a siege draw-out. The enemy stack inside is a mix of good and bad units, so certainly a doable thing to go and take them out. Now with the enemy's good units, like their Onobushi, I thought the mangonels might be able to take them out, but you can see the sheer spread of where the shots are landing. All of my mangonels are targeted onto the Onobushi at the very front of their army, but yeah, sometimes they get very, very far away in terms of where the shots actually land. I'm going to push things fine here, waiting to the last possible second to retreat my archers, probably because I wasn't paying close enough attention. And now the fighting starts. When melee fighting is concerned, we're probably fine because we have 2 stacks of melee infantry versus their 1 stack, so we'll be okay. You can also see some danger close shots landing from the mangonels, all unintentional. You can also see they're landing way out in the background as well. They're all still targeted onto this 1 unit of Onobushi, so even firing at just regular bow range, the accuracy of the mangonels is so low that you really can hit things right in front of them, including our own men. Pretty dodgy. As you can see though, the fight's still going well. The enemy's right side is gone, so my left is folding around. Unfortunately, it's not a complete siege draw-out success in that we didn't kill everything. Plus, you can't do a siege draw-out in Shogun 2 in the manner you can in, say, like Medieval 2, because the garrison is still there. And in this case, the garrison would have been blocked from spawning if I attacked the castle without doing a siege draw-out, so siege draw-outs are less valuable in this game overall. Now here's some bad news. Looks like our eastern defences are going to be tested right now because the Shogunate is on us. So here they're leading their attack with some gun samurai, not the best unit to climb over the wall with, but it's probably still going to deal with my archers just fine. And then they're following up with Naginata heroes, warrior monk heroes that is. And yes, they will make short work of anything really. One other thing working against us is that in the game, samurai are much less likely to fall while climbing, so you don't get all the free kills like you do when militia climb up and 20% of them die before they reach the top. Here you're lucky to get the odd 1 or 2 deaths while a samurai unit climbs, but generally they make it to the top intact. Now over here I've thrown my katana retainers in to try and stop the enemy's guns and Naginata heroes, the idea being that while they're stuck there, we can just shower arrows on them from the inner part of the castle. But then the armor thing comes into play again. You can see we are hitting them with arrows constantly, but we're not getting very many kills. In fact, we're getting killed. We're probably killing more of our own men because we have lower armor stats than them. Here I was trying to look for an example of just how the arrows don't really do anything, and you can kind of see how it's happening. There are arrows hitting these monks constantly, but there's no evidence of this taking place. They just don't take casualties as the arrows hit them. The arrows go through them. So yes, even monks, which tend to have lower armor than samurai, are functionally invincible. There is a chance they'll die when arrows hit them, it's just not very high, so the vast majority don't do any damage. So the enemy are breaking through, but now they're breaking through to my big boys. I've got a Yari wall of monks behind this even tighter choke point as they get closer to the middle of the castle. Soon the enemy are starting to climb into the middle of the castle. Here I was able to get some fire arrows onto the blob around our Naginata warrior monks. Fire arrows have some kind of armor piercing capabilities I believe, although I don't know what it is, and they run out pretty soon. Here again you can see the arrows very clearly hitting things, it just doesn't do anything in this case, but it's nice to try. In the real footage I was taking a look, and this unit of Yari Ashigaru killed, I think it was 6 enemies in this fight. Here's the fast motion portrayal of the enemy just hacking through. Every now and again we kill one of them, but our chances of getting a kill in melee combat are just too low against units of this caliber. So it's almost surprising, we did almost kill half of the enemy in total. Not so bad, a couple of units did get some kills here, but broadly speaking we traded badly. the Kitabatake have sent an army that's more like what I wanted to face and what I expected to face. A couple of good units, but mostly bad units, stuff we can rout and take out. As for the plan, it's the usual sacrifice and shoot sort of thing. There, this one unit of Yumi militia runs in and takes out one of my Yari Ronin. He had all the time in the world to prepare for that guy arriving, but no one cares. Soon he just sort of randomly dies thanks to the magic of Yari Wall. Again, you don't even have to attack enemies, they will just die in proximity, but stats do still apply, so just invisible attacks are made at long range. Now this castle has the weakness that there are some ways to get into the middle part of the castle, but we can still win from this situation because these units are routable, meaning once we kill a load of them, we can get rid of them, and because we can't rout up here, we're bound to win even with a disadvantage, so soon we kill enough stuff to get a bunch of routs there. This unit of Yari Ronin is taking some moderate casualties, since I'm constantly using them to sacrifice or as a sacrifice just in front of the guns, but here that is vital work because they're stopping the enemy general in front of the guns and they're going to take big casualties from those attacks, meaning we'll win the battle as a result. Meanwhile, on the west side of Kyushu, the Shimazu have taken out my vassal over here after immediately declaring war on them, so we do need to send troops back in this direction now to deal with that threat. Our main force under the faction leader comes down to be near enough to this castle to reinforce. Then one army goes into besiege and our other army just shuffles forwards, not going too far forwards because that army needs to go back in the other direction this turn. Now back to our offensives. We've got a half stack of Shimazu stuff and a bunch of garrison units right here, including garrison tercios, which I was surprised by. They've got a Nanban port here, probably the Otomo's doing, so they get some nice foreign units in their garrison. Anyway, got a full stack to besiege them, and I can bring down another full stack that is the army that was previously on Kono naval invasion watch. They're still sitting there not navally invading, so I'm starting to think, well, I'll just use these troops to actually help with our conquest, because we can't commit a stack to waiting for them to land. It's better for them to just land, take our territory, and then we'll go back. Then at least we're not wasting stuff in the meantime. We've got a battle at Osaka Castle. I think it was that monk sitting by the castle. He's created a rebellion for us to face, a bunch of Ashigaru. Garrison units die first, the classic rule. Since I know they can come back from the dead, they can't hide that from me. And then we wait to see the result, and we are going to be losing a few garrison units to do this. But that's fine, we've got plenty of archers shooting in and the enemy will take huge casualties, and they're mostly Ashigaru, in fact they're all Ashigaru. The issue we have actually at Osaka is that while we might beat these rebellions down, we have no agents, so we can't stop them from just doing that again. And that will become a problem, that is a foreshadowing statement from me. Now back to the Shimazu attack front. We're going back to having two armies in the west and one in the east, and our two armies are coming up against fresh resistance they've built up in this area. As for the Shimazu's move, well, they make a pretty bad move actually. They attack me with everything that's outside the castle at the same time. I say everything, not the one unit that's on its own, because it was a mangonel and they can't reinforce. But basically, we kill all that stuff behind the castle, which is what I wanted to do anyway, so that's nice. And then, right after, they do sally out of the castle, but with everything else gone, and now I have two stacks. That balance bar is super far in my favour. Their army's just got tons of trash militia in it, so we ought to resolve them as well. We can go on down the road towards the next place. I used a ninja to check it out, and there's not much back there, which is what I figured since we just took out a whole bunch of stuff so recently. And indeed, there we go, a free capture for us right here. Now here, the Mogami are trying to take out one of my monks, which is suspicious. Then they declare war on me, so I guess that explains that. That's another vassal out of the bag. Then the Mogami main army goes to the west to attack this nearby castle. Only a level 1 castle and the garrison is very bad, so even though the army they're attacking with is very bad as well, I'm just going to let them have it. The Shogunate do that thing again at Osaka Castle that I was foreshadowing, so we'll be back there soon enough. We see some troops land somewhere on the northern coast very briefly here, and then the Kitabatake have also made a new rebellion at Miki Castle, so our front line is in trouble. The Kono don't go for the nearest castle to which they landed, instead they go further inland and attack this one. And while it's another bad balance bar, and only a level 1 castle, this time I'm going to fight it because we do have some good units in our garrison. Even things like the Yari militia will grab kills against enemy archers and stuff coming over the wall as they gradually fight to the last man. And the katana retainers will do much better. That's where the real damage will come. Those units of like 40 guys can grab a couple of hundred kills before they go down, and that's going to give us a result that's much better than the auto-resolve. Here's the final result. We killed more than half of them, so that's something. No idea if we've got any full units, probably not, but that will make the enemy think twice about going and attacking something else. It's got to sit there for potentially a very long time, like 5 to 10 turns to fully replenish. Now we have that rebellion I mentioned near Miki Castle, our new front line in the east. This castle sucks. We have a small garrison, but it does have 2 warrior monk units in it. I'm not unconvinced that this fight right here isn't unwinnable, because those warrior monks could mow down the enemy's Ashigaru in the right situation. Here you can see I did not want to gamble on using my time to find out whether we were going to win or lose that. I just let them have it, since the next castle is so much more heavily defended. Now then, we're back to Osaka for exactly the same battle we saw earlier, only this time our gates are open. And one other difference is here too, that is that I've gone and checked out the whole mod situation, and the historical castles are now back. So we have this huge castle complex to play with, much bigger than we can actually defend, so we're just going to sit in the middle. So we get something similar to what we saw at Negashima, where the enemy are going to be forced to attack us at a particular point, so we just throw our samurai there and absolutely tank everything, while our ranged units do some damage. To cut this story short, everything died, and this just worked out pretty well. The capture points are really small for some reason, so the AI doesn't seem to be able to path onto them. Meaning, while they seem to think they're standing on the capture point, they're not, and the towers are very slowly killing everybody here. So like 4 or 5 units were not only distracted from the battle, but gradually got thinned out and routed. We have defended this castle easily, and I certainly think switching to the historical castle helped us out. And not just because of the glitches, it is also a better castle, but glitches certainly help us out, and I can't remember a Shogun 2 campaign where I haven't relied on glitches somewhere to get away with things, so that's handy. Perhaps we'll see more rebellions there, but maybe with the help of that castle it won't be so onerous. Really, it's all the other castles that are under threat that I'm more worried about, and here was one step taken to start resolving that. I'm going to put together a new army from bits and pieces of all the garrisons that are gradually not needing to be here in northern Kyushu. I'm going to have a stack packed out with Long Yari Ashigaru that will be going east towards the Mogami. This is going to be our official cleanup stack. We'll try and contain and deal with our Mogami vassal rebellion. I'm going to abandon our front line with the Hachikiyama in order to have all of these troops rush back to be close to this latest naval invasion. The Honma are right there. We had one of our vassals, the Mogami betrayers, instantly taking down one of our castles, and there's going to be more of that to come because their army's still on the move. They swing around from the previous place they took to a new place, and once again the garrison's not looking all that good, but in this case I decided to do the last stand manually to pick up some kills here. We did get a lot of kills, but unfortunately nowhere near enough to chain rout the enemy army and get away with this, so the balance bar's not looking good. A while later we did kill more than half of them, and that's pretty good because that's going to make them think twice about just rampaging on and taking all the other castles nearby. In the Shimazu turn, they come and attack this bridge defense setup I had set up. Unfortunately for them, they attack with this tiny army. Not sure what the plan was, but they just die. And then, with that first army dead, they decide to try again with their bigger army, so this is a bit more like it. It's still an auto-resolve, really. That balance bar's good enough. That's just spreading a few casualties through our 2 armies would be fine. But because I was sort of set up and looking forward to this bridge battle, I thought I'd do it manually anyway, because you never know, we might get an even bigger ratio using the advantage the map will give us here. And here we face another kind of disadvantage of actually doing this bridge battle manually, and that is that the bridge has this invisible wall beside it. The railings are considered physically to go as high as the highest post, and you might note that's higher than the size of a soldier. So you can't actually shoot guys on the bridge from the side. You have to get the right angle, meaning a lot of the shots don't do much and you don't pick up loads of kills as the enemy are concentrated on the bridge, which is a shame because that's a great opportunity. Works much better firing into a ford instead. So yes, everything's going to get across and now we're just going to have a straight up melee. There is still some advantage from the bridge because we can keep the melee front very concentrated, which suits our not particularly melee focused army. They all try to get out of there, we can quickly block off the bridge and pick up all the kills we want, leading to this result. Not sure if that's actually better than the auto-resolve. We've probably got fewer losses than an auto-resolve would have given, but because they're concentrated on certain units, they're harder to get back, so it might actually be more losses in the long run. But actually one of my two armies here is stuck because there's a monk blocking the only way for them to walk to the west, so I can only advance with half my force. Luckily, by using Night Attack, we can take this castle for free right now. And then the other army, well, it's just going to have to sit there. Then at the end of the next end turn, this happens again. We've got another battle at Osaka Castle. They get stuck trying to capture towers, you might remember. And some of them are just walking around, not doing too much. I feel a bit bad because this is basically a repeatable glitch that we can use to exploit and get more wins on this map in particular. But on the other hand, if the AI is going to keep making these Buddhist rebels, I am not interested in finishing this campaign unless I can somehow just kind of exploit my way through those potentially more than one rebel battles per turn that's going to keep happening. We've got another rebellion near Himeji Castle, guessing that's just going to keep happening as well, so the trouble is brewing. Meanwhile, we can keep moving down the east coast of Kyushu, and we are able to grab this quick capture with an undefended castle. And because that monk got out the way, we can now advance with both of our armies. The next castle down the road has a full stack garrison. We can clear out some reinforcements outside and get this set up. I originally thought, well, I'll wait and just siege them out because it's only a 2-turn until starvation situation, and my second army can be hidden in the nearby forest just to the north of my stack, and that actually causes that to resolve faster because the garrison sallies out. Broadly speaking, we have a big long melee line that's going to extend around the edges of the enemy's blob. So once their formation finally coalesces in front of us, we can go for the surround and pound, and that's going to do the business. I'm sure the bounce bar being that good, again, gives them some sort of morale penalty, I don't really know, and the game doesn't really tell you, but we're probably routing them pretty easily because they don't fight for very long, even though they do have a few good units in this army. We do get a pretty good result. We kill all but 3 enemies according to the result. And the game's willing to just delete those last 3 and say, fine, you get the castle. So that's great. We get it slightly earlier than we would have otherwise, and we get some extra money from that as well. The Ashikaga Shogunate bribe some rebels to join them there. Never seen that happen before, so that's interesting. And then we see a battle against the Honma. Anyway, I've got plenty of garrison units to sacrifice, so I just leave them outside dying at first. We got a glitch in our favour when a couple of enemy units just got stuck over here near this tower. The tower will very slowly kill them. That sort of tower isn't very good. But basically those units are out of the fight, so that's making things a bit easier for us. They did have some Portuguese troops attacking here, and they're going to absolutely slaughter my garrison Yari militia. But I can throw in my collection of good units like my samurai to fight them instead. This crashes the replay, as you can see. We win this one without doing anything particularly special, and the enemy force is completely destroyed, so that is the end of their invasion. And now we have a battle with the Suzuki because they come in at Nagashima from the west. Given what we saw earlier in the series, I was pretty confident I didn't need to really do anything in this fight, so I wanted to check out whether the mysterious climb down into the underworld was still going on, and looks like it is. So good luck down there, boys. All the guys who went down there before were never seen again, but you never know, maybe you will defeat the boss. After a while, everything routs, and we're going to pick up that win pretty easy, so this army was not much of a threat, and we even captured the mangonel, adding to the garrison of the castle. Now some bad news, the Uragami declare war on me. This is the vassal near Himeji Castle, and we see them come at us right away. Unfortunately, they don't go for the heavily garrisoned and powerful Himeji Castle, they attack the not garrisoned and useless tiny castle next door. So this is a pretty bad situation, but seeing that the enemy had tons of trash, I thought I will do this manually again, because things like our samurai might be able to deny the enemy a couple of units at least. One nice thing about this big map is it tends to have really long climbs, meaning we have a good chance of picking up extra kills from the enemy falling down. And looking at the bodies on the floor there, we've certainly gotten a lot of those. It's kind of hard to tell how many you're getting as a fight goes on, but we'll see in a second. We did get quite a lot. We killed like half of them there. So again, that might make them think twice about going to attack something else. But we're now going to go right on to another castle defense, because the rebels near Himeji attack. We've got a couple of blocking units after the big climb, and they're going to stop the enemy getting much further than that. Plus, these archers, after being baited in by these guys here who are now on the other side, are going to be facing samurai, and they will absolutely annihilate all these Ashikaga archers, especially because the climb reduces the enemy's stamina, making them worse at stuff. So that's all fine. And soon we pick up the heroic victory. It all went good, and my hope that Himeji Castle would be nice and defensible seems to be well placed. Looks like we could hold that place against other armies. My anti-Mogami reprisal force has now arrived. We can go right for this castle and take it back immediately. The army that did take this castle recently has gone back around to the north side of these mountains, and those two units of random militia that are standing out in the woods were spying on them, so that's how I know that. And basically, that's an easy capture, but we'll need to go on and find that army to really settle the matter. Against the Shimazu, we can easily advance and take the next castle at the southwest tip of the island. With the Shimazu, I wanted to do something, but as I said, it's kind of difficult with public order. But what I realized I could do is attack with just one of the armies, because the other army with our faction leader gets like +5 public order from character presence due to his perks. So by leaving one of the stacks behind and splitting the troops between the two castles, we can keep public order and still have nearly one army advance. I can also advance with a half stack down the eastern road here, and that's enough to make a reasonable siege on that next castle. Against our newly disloyal vassal, the Akizuki, all I can really do is have a couple of units be in the nearest castles. We've no major force, and we know they have 2 stacks, so just had to wait and see what they did. And what they did was send only one of the stacks, luckily enough, towards the more heavily garrisoned of the 2 castles next to them. A good thing though is that this map gets the same glitch we saw happen before on it. There's this redoubt area where there's a tower the enemy like to just stand underneath and watch. For some reason they can only attack with 1 unit of the 3 they send there, and that's going to help us out because that takes 2 entire units of the Katana Samurai out of the fight, a massive portion of the enemy's melee strength. Another unit of Katana Samurai is just wandering about in the corner under a tower. So that's 3 units of deadly Katana Samurai that aren't annihilating me right now, and this is helping out a lot because we should be dead by now basically in these melees. Katana Samurai should just cut through our militia, but with their numbers very much diminished by mistakes, things are going okay. Here those guys who were wandering about near the tower finally committed, but I just put my retainers in front of them and that will be a relatively even fight. Our retainers have fewer numbers but they also can't rout, so we'll come out on top. We got pretty much the ultimate sacrificial setup here. We've got 1 unit of Yari militia holding on against like 4 or 5 enemy units, and they've turned their flank, so we have great line of sight on this nice enemy blob, and we can just pluck away at them with the bows. They do get armor save, so it's a bit less effective than it looks, but still that's going to take out a whole bunch of samurai which we don't really have another way of dealing with, so this is the only way we can get through this. And that works out, we do take out those samurai. Another group of samurai was killed in front of my Yumi retainers here, and really things are starting to look pretty okay for this battle. They're sending in their general, and it's going to come down to a final battle in the interior, and we can't rout, so they have to kill all of us to get through there. Their general is going to annihilate some of my archers. One of their other generals though just threw himself away. He just walked about in front of some towers and lost his whole unit eventually. This map's pulling off some great glitches for us so far. A bit later, back in this main fight, it's just kind of happening now. The enemy are getting tired, their numbers are depleting, and while they're going to be killing my Katana Ashigaru easily, we don't have to kill that many of them to win the battle because they can rout. And here is the result. We did take significant losses, losing a real unit as well as a bunch of fake garrison units. But there we go, we've held on against the Akizuki. Their other army though starts moving towards us right away, so we'll see what comes of that. A Kitabatake monk dies there, probably trying to start a new rebellion, so that's perfect. And the Uragami come to attack Himeji Castle, so again, that's what I wanted to happen. I can send out my Katana Retainer Cav to go and slam the one unit of archers that stayed outside the castle. That's the end of them, and the ones that are going inside obviously won't do very well. Eventually everything dies, their general comes in and dies as well, and we call that a day. Our losses were irrelevantly small, and the enemy's losses were great, so that's more like it. That's what I want to see from the Uragami. We find that Mogami army at the next castle, and, well, we don't really have the best force to attack them with here. While their army's not very good, it's much bigger than ours, and we're packed out with Long Yari Ashigaru, a build that's super focused on field battles. So because of that, we're not going to go in for the assault. With my Shimazu siege that I set up, I've now reinforced the besieging stack, and now I thought, well, let's just try and take it. This is a situation where doing it manually would probably be better, but they do have a lot of archers, so I wasn't quite sure of that. And I'm also, stressed out from having done so many battles in quick succession recently, that I was fine just auto-resolving that and losing half of my men. This next castle over here is only lightly defended. I didn't go in to attack at first because I was wondering if I could get more troops from the other army to help, but they're both too far away and I need to keep the commander over there for public order, as I said. So we don't do that, but the auto-resolve on that castle is fine, so in we go. Now the Shimazu are starting to look pretty thin on the ground. They only have 3 castles left. We just don't have enough men and public order space to finish them off. Now the Akazuki do attack with their other army, which turns out to be worse than the first one, so that's good. Well, it's going to be an easier version of the fight we just saw, really. Doing the exact same plan, only this time instead of facing Katana and Yari Samurai, we're facing Yumi and Yari Militia, which will die way easier. A while later, lots of stuff is dead and this appears to be working. The bounce bar's still really bad because they have all that heavy cav waiting in the wings, but they haven't made a particular dent on our defences. You can see here some cav have run over to attack the redoubt area, but they don't really do anything. They go and join the queue to die without climbing up, so it can be more than 2 units waiting in the death queue. We've got it up to 3 units, and those Katana cav would have been okay in melee, so keeping them out of the fight is really useful. And once again, we have held this castle against Akizuki. Most of our losses were in the garrison, so we basically didn't lose them. That's all good stuff. Then some bad stuff happens. Yes, we're back here for another rebel fight at Osaka Castle. And here the enemy are throwing their archers into melee assault. I don't know why the AI has been doing that so much recently. It's usually better than that, but I shouldn't complain because it helps me out quite a lot how willing they are to sacrifice all of these archer Ashigaru into melee. And that's that, really. The enemy army ends up dying, mostly to the towers actually in the distance, with me not really doing anything. I'm also going to make a move here against the Mogami. You might remember there's actually an enemy stack in the castle in that forest off to the east here. It's been there for a long time, not attacking us. I think it might have had to do 10 turns of replenishment or something after we really owned them up on their way in. So I've been waiting around for them to attack, and since it hasn't happened, I'm going to risk making this move with the force I had to defend against them. We can go and attack this Mogami castle, and that's a good balance bar. We'll just take it back right away, and the Mogami can't respond because we have their main force under siege just to the west there. Now in the Shimazu turn, they send their army to attack that castle I just marched out of, then re-garrisoned with another army, meaning we get a pretty good situation here. We've got a decent enough half stack with a half stack of free garrison units. Now we also have this cheeky move. There's this garrisonable little bit of wall where I can put the guns in a position shooting into the flank of the enemy blob in front of the Yari wall. It doesn't work very well, the pathfinding totally messes up, but we do get 10 guys at least sniping into the side of this samurai blob, picking up some handy kills, and I'm sure the Yari wall's doing a good job as well. The guys are just kind of standing there, but it's probably killing the enemy with a bit of magic. Breaking my own rules really, because I'm using a real unit, the Yari running, to do that. But at least elsewhere we're sacrificing lots of garrison units, and that just feels good all the time. Giving us this result, the enemy army is totally taken down. Our army's looking pretty good, so that's prime time for a bit of a counterattack against those 2 castles in the background there. But first, more shenanigans. We see another naval invasion come in from the Kono clan. This one's kind of near the Mogami siege. We're facing south with the camera here. So we will have an army in the area to deal with that, whatever they go and get up to. But we've also got this going on. Our old friends, the Uragami, are sending another giant wave of trash against our big castle at Himeji. Here we are sometime later. Looks like the stuff at the northern wall's been taken out. The other units got near to the centre, but gradually were killed. And that's the end of that, really. We might be able to actually take our tiny garrisons out and counterattack in a meaningful way. Here we only have a few troops to besiege this nearby castle. Their garrison's a bit bigger, but I've got this other little group that can come down as well. And all together, the balance bar is now okay, just because we have experience and a couple of good units. I was kind of hesitant about auto-resolving this, but I thought it probably will be better than a manual resolve. And we take it. We do actually suffer a bunch of casualties right here, but the good news is that with the Uragami recently defeated, we're unlikely to need this army again for a few turns. Now with the Mogami, my group coming in from the right arrives, and I'm able to get everything outside the castle into this one fight. Pretty much the same balance bar we just saw, and again it's not the best result, but good enough for me. We clear those guys out. We don't actually quite kill them, and where they retreat to, they're still in range of my main besieging action, so we haven't really dealt with the outside the castle situation. With the Shimazu, I realised we might as well move out and take this castle here with my 2/3-ish stack of remaining good troops, since there's not much inside. Obviously, it would be better to do this next turn because I could bring down the other army that's sitting just to the north. But it's also nice to take out this castle early because the Shimazu were going to recruit something, and we're stealing a bit of money from them in the process. The Mogami do sally out, so it's time for an everything versus everything fight here, a decisive battle for the fate of the Mogami. But yes, we're just going to fall back behind the Yari wall and hope the enemy run into it. That's our overall strategy. And for the most part, they are doing what I want them to do, and that is to run into the front of the Yari wall. But the real move we need to make in this fight is for our reinforcements to swoop into the enemy from behind. And here it is happening. They were all exhausted by the time they arrived, but I can pop a sprint on the whole group to not only increase their charge bonus and speed as they come in, but to have them ignore their stamina for like 30 seconds. And that's all we need, because with so many militia units on the field, we can get rid of them easily enough. Anyway, as for the result, we did lose a whole load of stuff, but no full units, and that's perfect. We can move on in and take the castle right now. Had the option to remake the Mogami, but I don't think we'll do that. We'll keep it for ourselves. There was a naval invasion nearby, so there are now 2 naval invasions near that Mogami territory that the army we just saw will have to go and deal with. But first, the long-awaited Hatakeyama invasion starts, and it starts in a strange fashion. They brought 2 stacks, but one of the stacks walked past the first castle. So the battle at the first castle is just going to be a one-on-one. They've got a couple of trebuchets out there. I figured this wouldn't mean much. I thought maybe they'll just deploy out of range and we can ignore them. But this bot is in range apparently, and not only that, it's in range of the very middle of our castle. So they're launching these shots up, and they're landing where all our troops are actually concentrated. So this is potentially dangerous. They're actually hitting stuff, and they might even blow up parts of the wall as well. Seeing this, I can't ignore them, so I had to send out the cav. Took them a while to gradually work their way out of the castle and over to the trebuchets, but they didn't do too much in the meantime, and now we arrive to take out the crews. Although that said, there are 120 crewmen out here, and I've only got like 20 or so cav, plus the second set of mangonels is willing to shoot into the first set, killing more of my guys. So it wasn't a complete guarantee we'd actually get away with this. Fortunately, as the grind went on, the enemy were easy enough to rout, so we are able to get rid of those mangonel crews. Meanwhile, everything else is jumping into the castle, and we're doing the usual sacrifice strategy, putting some garrison units on the outer parts to delay the enemy as they come in, and then slamming them with arrows and guns. So here we are a while later. Long story short, it all just worked. The enemy routed, they failed to reach the centre of the castle, and the battle was a pretty easy win in the end. So that's Hatakeyama Invasion Force 1 cut down to size, and the other tanks just chilling over there. We'll see what they do. Just saw signs of another naval invasion coming in there, and the Kono are up to no good. The stack I mentioned earlier hidden in the forest is moving out, and a stack they landed earlier also in this part is coming to attack this castle. Didn't feel like doing a last stand this time since we don't have very much. Figured we just wouldn't really achieve anything worth doing. So we lose that territory, and they immediately move out towards the former Mogami territory. So that's good, since that's where our army is. Then, like most turns, we fight a battle at Osaka Castle. Time to move on to do something about the Kono here. They've got 2 armies on the move. I can easily move 1 army into that castle nearby to stop them, but if they just attacked somewhere else, that would be annoying. I need them to be obliging here, really. With the Shimazu, it's time to deal the final blow. I get the 2 armies near their final castle together and go in. That's just an auto-resolve. And down they go, and with that, the Shimazu clan is completely defeated, and we've achieved the first part of my plan to continue winning the campaign, basically. We've got Kyushu under our control, well, apart from the Akazuki siege at the top, and now our main forces can start moving to actually counter some of the enemy factions that have been harassing us so far. In the meantime, this Satake army, which we just saw had landed in our territory, is here making an attack at the nearby castle, and I thought I'll come down here to see if we can do anything about these guys. They very kindly mostly attacked in one location, which was quite good. However, that also caused them to overwhelm my defences, which were mostly just bow Ashigaru fighting in melee. So they did swarm through, get to the capture point and bring us down. But while I haven't really shown it in this battle, over the course of the grinding as they gradually killed my men, we did kill about 1,000 enemies of the 2,500 they brought in. So that's not bad at all. However, it's not enough to stop them from moving on to immediately attack another castle. And things generally worked out. Looks like they're making it into the middle over here, but they're wavering as they climb. We're probably going to take them out. And of course, our entire army is completely sacrificable, so I don't mind letting them fight the Shigaru, take like 5 casualties, and that's enough to finish them off, that sort of thing. Here we are a while later. When the business is done, really, we take out all the melee units that made it in, but the balance bar says there's still more to do, and what I think is happening here is something we have seen happen before. They've got a load of archers hidden in the forest around the castle, and they're just sort of sitting around, not really doing anything. Same deal with their cav. I'm just going to stand here until the timer runs out, and that gives us this result. We've won the battle, so we've stopped them taking a second castle and cut them down to size. Not really in a position to counterattack or anything, but that's good. That's going to buy us some more time over there. And then we're back to the Hatakeyama thing. It's just the usual, really. They come in, we delay them as they come in, and then we hit them with a bunch of arrows and shoot them a bunch. And broadly speaking, that works out. Here we are a bit later with most of their stuff routing in and around the castle. So there we go. We won with negligible losses, and that's the Hatakeyama invasion over. Now the Uragami come and attack the castle that's not Himeji, ruining my plan. They went in the other direction here. And looks like the enemy are going to make this easy for me. They're just standing there in front of my archers getting shot. Thank you very much. Not sure how many more stacks of trash they can have, but hopefully we can get a counterattack soon before they just make another one. Obviously we didn't get the Kono ambush I was going for, so instead we're going to move up and just look for their army, or perhaps go for the castle. Didn't see much. I thought I'd initially go for another ambush plan because there is a forest just beside the road, so we could do that. But I saw this group here's on its own. It looked like it wasn't in reinforcement range of the castle, so I thought I'll just go finish them off. But apparently it is in reinforcement range of the castle. Now our men set up and start moving up towards the enemy's rear, while we make our main attack from the front, and we really are just going to run wildly into the forest, not really making much use of our Long Yari Ashigaru's Long Yari abilities. You can see they're currently just standing there, not advancing, despite what I just said. And that's because we faced a little issue. When you target enemies, if the enemy unit suddenly goes hidden for a moment, it stops your targeting. So what happened was I targeted many of my units onto the enemy's archers while they were shuffling about or something, and then they disappeared halfway through the charge, so my men just stopped and stood there until I realized that had happened. Very good stuff, but eventually we do get the two sides to collide. Some of the units I very quickly put onto Yari Wall at the last second, like these guys here. We've got a Yari Wall on Yari Wall action, but mine's longer. My big plan of attacking them from the rear didn't come to all that much actually, because they had this third line of troops at the back. While they didn't turn around, so we got a back attack on them, it's not a back and a front attack, which is what I wanted to sandwich them here. But no, we've got the enemy surrounded, but they're always fighting us in one direction, so it's not technically going to have any effect on their morale. This was the part of the line where we did actually attack the enemy from front and back. So we've taken out several units, and now we can move in between the enemy's two lines, and this is where the action will really happen. Now we're going to have tons of rear attack opportunities, and that's going to clear things up. Loads of high strength samurai just rout, and then they're just going to die like instantly, and this battle is instantly over. So there we go, we've taken out this incursion. Still plenty more blocks of enemy territory inside our own territory to deal with, but we're getting there. On that topic, the Akazuki, who we've had under siege for a while, sally out. We've pretty much sieged them out at this stage. So they're out of supplies, they attack, that bounce bar's good enough for me, so we'll just kill them with the auto-resolve. Now with the Uragami, we have this stack, which is probably about as good as their stack, and the bounce bar seems to agree there. Even though they do have a lot of melee trash, our melee stuff's a bit better, and that's what will matter in a manual resolve, so good to see. The Kono drop another force on Kyushu. That's an annoying thing to keep in mind as we go for Shikoku. Kyushu can still be invaded in the meantime, so we might need to leave something there. And then we're straight back to this Uragami thing, because they sallied right away. On the left end of the line, we're outflanking them with these Katana Ronin, who are going to move down and be our shock assault unit. And on the right side of the formation in general, things are pretty good melee-wise, because all of our Katana Ashigaru are charging into these militia. They're going to get eaten up by the Katanas, and then we'll have that right side just cleared up and can start folding in. The Uragami are gone, and with that we've now finally wrestled away all of our disloyal vassals. And you might also be thinking, how come we haven't been invaded by the shogunate? You may remember they had a, quite frankly, unstoppable army. And if it just came up here, I'm sure it would conquer all our stuff, but it hasn't come up here. I think that's just because there are rebels in the way and the AI has got a bit confused. It can't path to us and it hasn't thought about attacking the rebels. So we've actually been saved from fighting their really powerful veteran samurai army. And we're actually in a position now to be able to launch an army towards Shikoku Island. The issue is things like this. In the fog of war, there can be enemy ships that stop you. So we need to be sure that there is a route we can actually take, and that just means sacrificing ships at this point. So I've built all these trade ships here and there, and they're just going to sail forwards looking for ways clear of enemies. And here we do appear to find one. There's a bit of beach right there, meaning we can land, and that's going to be in range of this fleet, and my troops here have enough movement points to get into the fleet, so I can actually land some troops there right now. There's no particular reason to do it right now other than there's an opportunity, and I decided to just go for it for the memes and such. Also, when it comes to attacking the Kono, we've got this situation back on Honshu. I was moving through some woods with these guys to come and besiege this castle. The problem is this castle is very heavily garrisoned, so we can't make an attack, and even a sally wouldn't be that good of a situation for us. I do have some reinforcements I can use to help out, but there's another project right next to that one that I wanted to take part in as well. The Satake have that castle just to the west there, and I want to try and take it back since I figured they probably don't have that much stuff since we have defeated them recently. Here did some Ashigaru scouting and discovered they have a very small army, but it's in ambush just on our border, so that means we lose our unit, but then everything can go and attack the now revealed ambushing force, so we take out a couple of officers and a couple of good units right there. And we can change this up into a bait and ambush situation, which if it works will mean we end up fighting a similar battle to the Sally, only they'll not have those few extra units, so that's a little bit better. But anyway, let's see what actually does happen. The Kono on Shikoku have an army, so looks like we are going to have a contested landing right here, but at least the battle itself is nothing too bad. I mean, both sides have pretty similar strength piling into each other, but we are in Yari Wall formation in some cases. At the far right end of the line, we've got some Katana Ronin who are going to annihilate those enemy spears, so we'll have the right flank won in a moment and we'll be able to fold in. And on the left end of the line, I had some other Ronin I could push into the fights to try and win them, as well as these Ronin over here at the far left. They're going to take out those Ashigaru that came to investigate while the gunners set up some outflanking shots. At the very top of the hill, I had my fire bombers, and they're going wild, blowing everybody up. They actually had a pretty good battle because the enemy general came up the hill, targeted the firebomb throwers onto the general, and we basically took out his whole unit in a single volley, so that worked super well. Meanwhile, we're clearing things up over here on the far left. We're ready to bring the blunderbuss troops in. The thing is, they're not really going to be of any use to us now because we're starting to win the main fight. The balance bar's looking good and the enemy's lesser troops are retreating. Here's the result. It actually wasn't that good because when I hit end battle, the game was not generous with the final auto-resolve. So we killed 2,000 but lost 1,000 ourselves. Not ideal for a situation where we're kind of stuck out there. But before we look into that again, that ambush I set up happens. In retrospect, I'm pretty sure this was a bad idea because you can see there's a 2/3 stack garrison that will now be allowed to spawn in the castle after this fight. So it probably would have been better to fight this as a siege sally defense. They have lots of archers attacking our northern line, need to get the micro going to sort that out. And in the south there's just going to be a big brawl between the various units. We get a good fight right here, where our Long Yari Ashigaru in Long Yari Wall formation managed to hold off some Katana Samurai and start using the repulsor magic on them, meaning we'll be able to do really well in that fight. It was a fight between some Long Yari Ashigaru on both sides where our men seemed to do much better for whatever reason, so we cut them down. I guess the Long Yari magic was on our side. And here was a great fight. Managed to rotate a battle so that some enemy samurai had their backs to a line of my guns. Now we can just snipe them as the fight goes on and we'll easily win. And here's certainly what we don't need. The enemy's heavy cav get in amongst our archers, and there's just nothing we can do there. Those archers are going to go down real fast. At least the enemy archers, of which there are quite a lot more, are also going down real fast. We've got a whole blob of stuff just trying to force our way through these fights to get more and more archers into melee. Not doing this in a particularly sophisticated way, but it seems to be working. And here's that good fight between the Long Yari Ashigaru and the Katana Samurai. You can see they're struggling to get close enough. Many of them are standing well back where they can still be attacked by our magic. So that's all good for us and we're going to win that one. But yes, plenty of brawls where both sides are being annihilated. And really it's only the arrival of my reinforcements that clears some of these up, because suddenly we can gang up on enemy units like 4-on-1. You can see in the result, we lost 2,000 men to take out 2,500. Not that good. Proportionally the results are okay because we had absolutely loads of troops. But this doesn't leave us in a very strategically good situation, because now we still have to face down the castle. It's going to be fully garrisoned and our army's wrecked, so it's probably not going to be able to do anything. Not really sure how, but we do end up with a balanced siege when I come to restart it. Thought that seemed a bit strange given how on the left our units are like basically dead, but I guess we have a lot of numbers since we have large units overall, and numbers do count for a lot on the balance bar. Anyway, as for that other nearby siege, luckily enough there really wasn't that much here, just a bunch of trash, although there's a fair amount of garrison trash as well for us to deal with. First though, we've got some action over at Nagashima. Surprised this isn't happening all the time. For some reason, despite the fact Nagashima is surrounded by enemy territory, it just doesn't really get attacked, and now that the Oda are attacking, they've attacked with this really bad army. I'm sure they could just send like 10 stacks at us if they wanted to. Since the enemy are kind of coming at us in a big column, it's quite easy to hit stuff. You don't really need to get the range right, so it's perfect for manual shooting. So yes, we just blast away, and one of the nice things is that when you manually fire mangonels, while only one of the pieces can fire, it kind of absorbs the reload skill of the other pieces, so you can actually fire very rapidly. After a while, we've blown up a whole bunch of enemies, and presumably some sort of fight's going on. Looks like I decided to come and check it at some point. And here we go. The final result is that they got absolutely destroyed and nothing happened to us. And then we do see a battle with the Kono. They sent another stack over to our landing zone. So it looks like I was right to be cautious, although I really didn't think it would be the Kono making this attack. I did get my weaker army to fight a few enemy units. I kind of wanted them to not fight at all, but it was sort of unavoidable, and we do want to use our numbers to do something. So I'm folding around on the left, taking down a couple of enemy units. And on the right we can fold around as well. Just because we have spare things, since it's 2 of our armies versus 1 of theirs, we're going to have a whole bunch of spare units. And broadly speaking, we're in the money here. We did take down the enemy. Our first army is now down to low health on 1 unit, so risk of losing it there. But overall, things are good. And that's another Kono stack down. Surely they can't have many troops left after all of this. Our first priority now, of course, will be to go and take that castle using both stacks to make it a nice auto-resolve. And the question now is, will the auto-resolve delete that unit that's on low health? We only have to lose a few men to lose a whole unit here. We were lucky though, it didn't actually take any men away from the really damaged unit, so we got this place for free, and now the replenishment begins and we avoid winter attrition. But I decided to go back to that Sateke siege over here, mainly because winter has appeared, and I thought, while I could leave the 2 sieges in this area going, I don't really want to, because we'll have to wait a few turns to finish them off naturally, and we'll lose loads of men to attrition if we wait that long. So I figured this battle here is actually probably easier than it looks. The archers are all facing south, so I can just rain arrows on them from a vaguely western direction and they don't care. But eventually we've picked up a whole load of kills in this fashion. Now I'm skipping very far ahead to after I've used up all the ammo on all of my archers. We just need to go over the walls and melee kill everything left over. Many of our melee attacking units are being taken downtown quite quickly. Even those warrior monks are struggling against those militia. They might be getting sniped by a tower or something. But yes, it's difficult to take out all of the enemies completely, because even regular Ashigaru are only a bit better than militia, and once they're exhausted and their melee stats are reduced by that, the two sides don't really outkill each other that much, and the enemy can out-morale me. Now it's time for the Yumi Militia to be our new offensive units then. I'm going for the capture point with them. The idea was just to have our survivors out there keep the enemy busy while we grab these captures. They got some Katana Ronin to stand on the castle capture point, while the bows grab those towers. A decisive victory it claims, but actually our losses were enormous. We lost more than half our army, including a whole bunch of units, 2 of them being warrior monk units as well, so some bad losses there. But we've got some action in the end turn sequence. First, the Kono decide to suicide some troops against the castle. Not sure what the plan there was, but it didn't work. Then another army appears from the other direction. It's the Sayonji, one of the other factions on the island, and they've got a stack of trash to come show us. We've got both our armies in this defense, but because we're damaged, the balance bar's not quite good enough for me to just wipe them aside. And back in the castle, things are looking good too. We've got these Yumi militia just kind of chilling below our blunderbusses, getting shot sometimes, not really doing much damage, so that's good for us. And of course their melee assault infantry are all going to be Yari militia, so we can just defeat them in melee with our archers, especially where it's Yumi Ronin. We took basically no casualties and no units were lost. That's the most important thing to achieve there. And the enemy lost their whole army, so we can think about actually going west and stealing one of their castles perhaps. My main priority though was to go east and try to follow up on all the victories we've got against Kono recently. And to my surprise, there is another army over here. They had loads of stuff here, considering they had several stacks sent out to attack us as well. So we end up besieging a full stack in this castle. But on the way there, we also walked past this other castle. And I thought, well, we might as well just go attack that one this turn instead, so at least we can get an easy capture. We lose something like 30 men in that auto-resolve. Nice and easy. And now we can go back to the other castle. And there we have it. We'll have both of our stacks in castles ready to react to whatever the enemy bring at us in their turns. It's also now time to finish off the Kono at this siege by bringing in a load of other stuff, including the troops that did that Satake battle last time. So now I've got a whole bunch of stuff. The balance bar's starting to look good. We lose no units, so the plan worked out. And at last this castle is taken, and because we've lost no units, we can now use these units for other things. The main army can go and start helping out with our attack on Shikoku using some of the nearby easy crossing points. I bet that army will move out and attack the force I just landed right away. But that was not the case. They did move out, but they attacked the castle with our main force inside it instead. So that's perfect, I guess. This is a chance for us to defeat them out of their castle in a situation where we should have a big advantage. Although unfortunately, while it's a nice good old castle defense, we don't have garrison units, so we can't be as sacrificial as usual. Might need to be a bit more conservative to actually stay alive, ready for our counterattack afterwards. It was made even better here by the fact the enemy decided to lead the assault with their gunners in melee. That didn't last very long. Now we get to the real deal that I was expecting, for the samurai to come and fight with our Yari wall, and we'll have tons of guns shooting into their flank, and the morale shock alone seems to make that fight go very well. They are down. I guess technically they have another army after this, because they actually recruit a bunch of units into the castle in the same turn, so that other castle now isn't totally empty like I thought it was going to be. However, that doesn't really matter, because I just landed that new army. They can just shuffle over to be in reinforcement range, and now when I attack we get this battle right here. Easy auto-resolve, and the Kono have now actually been defeated. Good stuff. Now I was interested to find out whether the Sayonji over here were in a vulnerable position after losing that stack of trash. And actually it was much better than I expected. I thought there'd be something here, like another stack of trash. But no, they had no garrison at the nearby castle, so we swoop in and take that right away. We also spy the next castle along. It's only got a half stack in it. So this is kind of surprising. These guys only had one fewer castle than the Kono had. yet they don't have like the 10 armies that the Gono did have, so this is going quite well. And they're also absolutely mad. They send this half stack of trash to attack this castle immediately. Eventually it looks like I sped things up and we just defeated the enemy as they came over the wall. Now once we get to our turn, we simply advance and hit that castle. Adding the garrison, they've got something here, so I thought, well, I'll leave them under siege for now, since I do have some Ashikaga reinforcements available somewhere a couple of castles back I could bring over. The Hongan-ji, with their Mad Lad mode engaged, decide to sally against my besieging force with some trash, and that's not going to go very well. This time, I did not want to give up some of my precious free time to actually fight this, even though the balance bar wasn't quite as good as I wanted it to be. But the auto-resolve's fine actually, so in we go. Actually not in we go, a few men survived, so we're going to have to auto-resolve them again to finish the castle. That Buddhist rebels place that has, in my theory, been stopping the enemy attack me at the eastern end of our territory has finally gone. Also spotted here, that really powerful army that owned me up before is still sitting there where we last saw it, so I guess the Shogunate's giving up on doing anything. If they came over, we'd be in trouble. As for the Miyoshi, I was thinking of advancing on that castle, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to. I felt like there's probably more there than we know about. So it was time to get the second army to come and help, and what I thought I'd do is a conservative strategy. I'm going to leave half of the second army behind in case the Aki do something. Now my bait and ambush strategy has worked. Turns out there were actually 2 stacks in that castle ahead of us. They both come out, including their faction leader, and we get the ambush. We'll want to just auto-resolve that, because in a manual resolve we'd be much weaker than it looks because the second stack wouldn't help. And down they go. We kill most of the first army and the second army just walks off after that. So we'll have the chance to continue advancing there. But we also see some action from the Aki. They actually do come through the middle of the island and attack the castle where I left a half stack in defense, so it's good that I bothered to do that. Here we are a bit later, when the enemy are making a climb up one of the walls underneath the firebomb throwers, and I wasn't paying enough attention because firebomb throwers will throw the firebombs at themselves when the enemy are real close, and that will destroy the wall they're standing on, thus blowing up one of my units of firebomb throwers and a bunch of archers as well. It kills all of the enemies, so it kind of ends that fight, but we took a lot more losses than I think we would have if we just tried to fight them in melee. Anyway, that aside, everything's going well. We've got the enemy choke pointed off at the usual points and they're just getting taken out. We lost 1,000 guys in that defense, quite a few actually, but many of those guys will be necromanceable and a bunch more were the militia outside the castle, which at the end of the day nobody really cares about. We just have to have one guy in the unit so we can get the public order bonus from having them around. That's all we really need them for. And now I can make the crossing again. This time I can dump the army in a location that's in range of this Miyoshi castle and a nearby Miyoshi army. So while I'm not able to move the landed force this turn, they can still help us out this turn because they'll end up being forced into these battles I'm triggering. Then I initially thought maybe we could do this attack. The balance bar's okay, we could probably auto-resolve that and get away with this just fine. But for whatever reason I decided not to go with that. I think I was maybe thinking of drawing in these other nearby armies and pulling them over here. But first, the Aki attack us again. It's the same battle we saw last time, but twice as hard. 2 armies have come through the central part of the island to attack this castle. We're still a bit damaged from the last fight, and this time they have a lot more stuff. We're going to be doing the usual strategy to start off with on this particular map, which seems to be the most common of all maps. The enemy will attack this particular corner, we don't defend it and we fall back so that our guns can shoot at the enemy while they get stuck fighting a Yari wall over here. That's the plan anyway. This plan does have a potential weakness, a big weakness actually, and that is you don't fight the Yari wall, and in this case the AI actually realizes that. They just send their katana samurai to fight my gun Ashigaru, and that's actually going to be a bit of a problem. This could ruin the entire thing. I had to resolve that situation with the guns being in trouble, and some katana Ronin went over and did the business. They easily took out the enemy's limited number of remaining samurai. Then these militia started climbing in, and the guns themselves were able to beat them in melee one by one by the looks of it. So that's now happening. The AI are attacking the Yari wall and the gun plan is a go. Over here I had another gunpowder based plan. I've got these firebomb throwers throwing off this corner at one of my own walls. And you might know what that's going to do because we saw it last time. The firebomb throwers will destroy the walls. You get the weird physics thing, but this time I'd moved all of my troops away. So we actually just kill enemies, and I think we wipe out at least an entire unit of enemy infantry by doing that. Looks like the guns are again facing a lot of melee pressure. I'm supposed to be helping them out with my katana Ronin here, but there's this thing in Shogun 2 where sometimes there's a long delay between when you give an order and when it happens, if the order is something to do with a wall. So I had ordered my katana Ronin to go in and garrison the wall, but they're just not doing it right now. Things are looking good over here because my warrior monks can shoot so fast and accurate they can rout enemies' full-strength militia units, or even Ashikaga units, as they climb up in front of them, and then, once they complete the climb, they'll be slaughtered. I'm also now permanently leaving the katana Ronin here at the wall to deal with things like this, another militia unit climbing up. They're going to be absolutely mown down, so that's good. And hopefully the guns will be mowing down all the other stuff that's not climbing up as well. I can now start shooting at this other fight that's taking place over there in the distance. Some of my men don't appear to be bothering to shoot. In fact, it's the ones closest to the enemy that aren't shooting. Not sure why. Meanwhile, the gun plan is now back in action. I've lost a whole bunch of things holding this point, so I think 2 units have now died to keep the enemy standing here. But it doesn't matter how many died because we've killed many more than that on the enemy side. It is working out. And here we are, back at that other corner as their attack just about comes to an end. We just barely beat everything with just a couple of katana retainers and some firebomb throwers in melee. That's all looking good. Mainly in that area, it's now just archers attacking me. So I charged out of the gates, the Yumi Samurai already inside routed when I gave them a bit of a war cry from the warrior monks. And then we start slamming our way through things like Bo Ashigaru and Bo Militia that are just standing here. They didn't run away, which really helped as well. So we can beat them in melee, even though in a lot of cases here I'm fighting with my own bow units in melee. Mine are better, like these bow warrior monks in particular. I did lose another unit of militia holding off the enemy's bow militia in melee, just because, as mentioned before, Yari militia are actually pretty similar to bow militia in terms of their melee stats, so a bit of an even trade. But yes, we shot into them at the same time and eventually ground through those guys, with the castle just barely holding on. We did take an absolute beating there. We lost pretty much all of the garrison units, we lost most of our reinforcements, and we lost about half of our regular units as well. However, the enemy has it worse, losing over 5,000 troops, the best part of 2 stacks. So overall, I think we're now safe against the Aki. But at least this move is pretty good. We can move up with our stack that went down the west side of the island and attack this isolated Aki castle. Used a few trash units to help out with the auto-resolve, and there we go, that's a capture. With the Miyoshi, there's no attempt to come and lift the siege, they just sally out against us, so not sure what the full stack nearby is doing. But we end up being forced to take the auto-resolve that, frankly, I should have just taken the moment we got here. That would have given me pretty much the same result, and our armies could be somewhere else by now, so I don't really know what the hold up with all that was. I was being way too cautious. That's done now though. Interestingly, we have the option to make the Shimazu a vassal from this castle. Not sure why, and it's not very useful, so we don't do that. And the Miyoshi army nearby just walks off, so we'll fight them again soon enough. But then this happens. The Aki send another army up at this castle. One thing that was different though is that my reinforcement army is a bit better. I've got several units now hanging around outside the castle, including these firebomb throwers. So the plan to assassinate their generals a bit easier. I can bomb everything, and amidst the noise, I pretty much rout my own unit by the looks of things. But the idea is there, we can use the firebombs to actually defeat the enemy general. And here's the enemy just being absolutely slaughtered, as most of their infantry climb the wall, rout by the time they reach the top and just die. We did lose some stuff, but the losses have been strategically kept here to garrison units for the most part. So basically we didn't lose anything, and the Aki have lost yet another army. Now we've got another Miyoshi castle to hit, and like the last one, it does have a full stack of stuff inside. And also like the last one, there's another group outside, so I wanted to go and take them out before we consider making any attacks. Our support group will just set up behind the main besieging army here, and then our main force with our faction leader, which has extra movement points, can scoot around to attack the other group. Unfortunately it retreats, and while it retreats only a short distance, it's now out of my attack range, but it's also still in reinforcement range of the castle. That balance bar's already not that bad, probably could have auto-resolved that again, But again, I didn't, feeling cautious. Here's the Miyoshi's reaction, they walk backwards and forwards. Yes, they just did nothing, so that doesn't resolve anything. We'll come back to that, but here we have the Suzuki attacking Nagashima Castle. The enemy bunch up in the little corridor in front of my killing zone, and we can absolutely hammer them using the fact our mangonels can absorb reload power from each other, so we can fire very rapidly. Also, it looks like I'm aiming at my own troops here, but when you're shooting at things that are very close to you, you have to take into account that the crosshair's like the middle of the screen, but the shot's fired from higher up the screen, so it shoots over things in a way. And after a while, we get this result. We absolutely annihilated them with a 100-to-1 kill ratio and hundreds of kills on the mangonel. Obviously that actually went on for like 15 minutes, but I thought I probably won't sit here and make you watch me gradually blowing them up, even though it is quite satisfying. Back to the Miyoshi siege then. Now I can attack their reinforcement group, using night attack to cancel out their main army nearby, and with that we take out the reinforcements, including a bunch of tercios, meaning that the castle is probably now auto-resolvable. Again, deciding not to just take the castle, I went for this instead. I went to go field battle their nearby army. What I think might have been going on this whole part is I was trying to get a hashtag epic battle by making 2 enemy armies fight me at once against my 2.5, so we could have one big clash. I might have been trying to do it for the content, but this is the closest I can get. We've got 1.5 against 1 and a bit. So we end up in a skirmish that's not necessarily going very well, especially because we do lack archers. Many of our arch units are basically dead from all of the campaigning we've gone to up to this point. So that goes on for a while, but I did decide to try and move my infantry forwards and get a melee fight going. A few melee units from the enemy side came down towards me, but that wasn't all that meets the eye either. As for my reinforcement group, I was going to swoop in to rear attack the enemy, but actually they've positioned a whole bunch of extra units hidden over here to delay my reinforcements. That's a pretty good move, and so is this one. Their melee units, after they charged down towards mine, turned around and charged back up the hill, meaning I'm forced to go up the hill behind them, getting absolutely annihilated by their archers the whole time. At least my reinforcement army can win this battle over here, because while they had the sense to block me off, the stuff they have isn't enough to win the fight, so gradually we'll get through here. And I could really use them because the battle's very messy. The melee fights aren't going to be that good, although we do have some Yari wars going on, which might be helping. Things gradually go better and better, and you can see on the balance bar we have them now, especially because my reinforcement army is now arriving, with the general coming in first to annihilate some bows. Everything's okay, really. Our first army is looking a bit battered, but if we can just take some territory and get a couple of turns of replenishment, we'll be looking okay. But for whatever reason, taking territory hasn't been my priority, as I said. At least this army is down, and we even had a mission to defeat that army for some reason, so I get some bonus morale or something across all of my armies. I thought, let's just actually attack the castle, do the thing that again we should have done ages ago. That guy also dies in the background, and finally we will have actually taken some territory. So the not auto-resolving saga I think is over now. Maybe my desire for a decisive battle finally waned. We had some guys under siege last time they sallied and died, and here's me auto-resolving my way into that castle, leaving the Aki with just 2 more castles. The next one along's pretty close, and I did do some Ashigaru scouting to see what was there. Unfortunately, it's got a pretty big garrison, so I couldn't swoop in and just easily auto-resolve them like I thought I might be able to. Right now it's time to move on up against the Miyoshi. I've got our 2 armies here pushing this next castle. We can just auto-resolve this because the castle is half garrisoned with dead units from previous battles, so it's less strong than it looks. And I can also take the next castle just after it as well, because there was not much here. So with that, the Miyoshi are suddenly kicked off the island in one fell swoop. And the final thing I did in this turn is to go after the Aki. There's still some stuff in this castle, but I was able to muster up a bunch of other stuff of my own by bringing over units that were garrisoning castles to the north of this location. So we end up getting an auto-resolvable fight, and we take that castle. And then, in the same turn, we can go on and take the other castle just next to it as well. So with this, the Aki are going to be kicked out of the game. This army is damaged, but because it's got through all those battles, there's not going to be another battle here, and we've got plenty of time to replenish. That's looking good. It seems Shikoku has very suddenly fallen to us. We still need to take Awaji Island, the place to the east of it, but we're pretty much done here. Winter falls, and that gives me reason to not necessarily maintain my siege of the Tokugawa. And here are some more reasons. There are quite a lot of Ashikaga Shogunate things here, and this smaller stack just moved here, suggesting it's going to move on further towards us. Their good army is still garrisoned where they left it ages and ages ago. Meanwhile, over on, quite nearby actually, Awaji Island, we do manage to get some guys across the crossing and get this auto-resolve. Nice and easy, taking down the Miyoshi. That's another enemy out of there. Now the Ashikaga Shogunate do the thing I feared the most. Well, not making that rebellion just there. They take their good army and they use it again. So it's only the second time they've decided to use it. But the first time, they absolutely annihilated us. So I was dreading the second time. No idea why it took so long, but very grateful for that. Here we go then at Osaka Castle. But we have our magic castle effect. Disney will have to go find a new mascot because Osaka Castle is the true land of magic. The enemy stand under the towers and die. So that's the southern front shored up really. Back to the north, here we go. It's just going to be a massive onslaught of units. Some of them are bad, they do have some Ashigara units in there, and some of them are very good. The veteran samurai will not only beat my samurai, but can just shrug off the arrows, climb in and beat all of my archers and stuff as well. First, the enemy attack this first bit and just lose their momentum, lose all their stamina and lose a few men, and then we'll fall back for the main battle to be held near the bigger wall. Here you can see the gunners are getting out of there pretty early. We don't want them to be stuck in melee. They need to do lots of shooting later. I did leave behind the Onobushi, so a unit of Onobushi will fight enemy stuff here to delay them. The gunners and archers get out of there and fall back behind our next layer of defense. We've got 2 units of garrison militia. These ninjas attacking them are cut down by archers, so that goes okay. And as for the southern attack, well, it's going great. We've lost 0 troops. The enemy are losing troops fast because even the veteran and hero units which have high armor stats still die when the towers shoot them. So we are going to be cutting through tons of extremely powerful units, and that's going to be critical for us. Another thing that helped us out here was the enemy didn't make the climb up into the middle of the castle. That long climb would put them up in combat with my guns and archers and stop me from doing this plan really. But luckily they weren't paying too much attention, so the guns keep shooting. They were focused on attacking my bow and gun retainers on this smaller section. That's great because while they climb up there, they're going to get shot by my archers and guns further up. And that fight is taking place below a tower, and we've seen already in this video that towers will silently get loads of kills while you aren't really looking, especially against high armor units as I just said. Some of their troops finally did start climbing into the interior of the castle. Fortunately, they mainly climbed up where I had bow garrison and not where I had my gunners, so the gunners are still going. Some of them have also climbed into the interior over here. They cut through some Yari Ashigaru. However, I have loads of Yari Ashigaru. I've got like 4 units and they're all quite veteran from killing rebels in the past. I'm manoeuvring them to make sure I've got tons of guys standing on that tower capture point because I really felt it was critical to keep that tower firing. It's kind of hard to tell whether it's doing a lot of damage, but I had a feeling it was given how dead the enemy seemed to be at this point in the battle. We haven't really resisted them with anything particularly good and they are dying. Back at the south, an attack actually does happen. Somebody fires a gun in our general direction. These gunners set up nearby, deciding not to stand under a tower. But they are actually gradually getting shot by a tower that they're just on the edge of the range of, so they're not really doing much. Our little exploit shield to the south finally breaks a bit when this unit of Yari heroes decides to just charge through and actually attack the castle properly, so that's bad news. At least they're still climbing underneath a big tower, and that tower cuts them down basically. They tried to fight some of my archers and died in the process. They've still got units around the place, but they're not doing very much, like this general who's just standing somewhere being shot by a distant tower. The guy to his left gets cut down, then the guy to his right gets cut down, and I think he starts to suspect that the battle might not be going very well and he decides to walk off. That leads us to this result. Our garrison's in bad condition, but the real units portion is still alive. So we'll be straight back after this. We're actually fine, and their army has been completely destroyed, with the vast majority of the kills appearing to be coming from towers. It was even more than I thought. We actually didn't do that much to them ourselves. They just died due to the castle's pure exploit potential. Absolutely fantastic. I suppose that's the end of them. And I think, realistically, we've won the campaign. We're in a much stronger position than we were at the start of Realm Divide. And that Ashikaga Shogunate army was their last chance to do something about us, really. Now that it's gone, we can start steamrolling. So what I think I'll do is move towards capturing Kyoto as the final point of this campaign. Looks like we'll be starting next time with this battle, the Hatakeyama, coming at us with 2 stacks. We don't need to worry very much about our defences. They're only attacking with one of the 2 stacks. The other stack actually isn't even visible right now. It's out there somewhere. And inside we do have a full stack of defenders, including good yet sacrificable units like Katana Ronin Garrison. They can hold off enemy militia and stuff for ages. So I can sit around and snipe the enemy general who was in range of the mangonels. And the nice thing is they don't react to you shooting at them. He didn't try to get out of the way, so I just kept sniping. And sniping manually gives the mangonels good accuracy. Therefore, eventually, boom, we get a direct hit on the guy after killing enough of his guards to make him vulnerable, and he's out of there. Soon, we've just got them locked in melee, and we can sacrifice all the garrison stuff we need, throwing archers into melee and stuff as well once they're out of ammo, all the good stuff. And we can probably work through even good units like the Naginata Samurai and the Town Guard they had. So, we get to this situation. They're pretty much all dead, we're pretty much alive. The guys who are dead will be back to life very soon thanks to a bit of magic. We even get a general out of the deal. So good stuff, that's the end of that. The general that just got promoted at the Hatakeyama front can go out with all of the troops and actually attack the Hatakeyama now. We finished off some survivors, and some of the other survivors have gone back to the castle, which is great because now they're blocking garrison units from spawning. And this place is a level 3 castle, the fortress, so it's just as defensible as the previous place we held. Meaning this is a very safe advance off the front line. The balance bar is good as well, thanks to all the dead units blocking garrison stuff. So in we move and we take the castle. Now the front line's a bit further forward, but it's just as secure. And for the first time we've actually pushed against the Hatakeyama there, who have been very quiet during the war in general. The Tokugawa now make another appearance. They send 2 stacks to attack Nagashima Castle. And like any good battle, it's going to start with me doing this again. We get a nice shot there where it kind of skims past the enemy and it made a sound as if it made contact with someone's hat or something as it just flew over their head, then hit someone behind. So yes, we'll blow up the enemy as they come in as usual. But I do need to pay a bit more attention to the actual fight because by this stage, we're running pretty low on ammo after taking out all the stuff that came in earlier. So now our defensive tactic is much less effective. It's just going to be like our samurai fighting their samurai down there. There's no particular advantage, so we need to watch out. They certainly have numbers on their side. We're finally going to have to actually commit some of our real units, something we very rarely do in the Nagashima defences. Luckily, the enemy are dead enough that this isn't too daunting. We can just put our Ronin onto the wall, and they'll hold indefinitely with their infinite morale. The enemy samurai probably won't, so we should be able to get away with this. Plus, since the enemy are only attacking at like 2 or 3 points at once, the fact we only have 3 melee units in total isn't much of a problem. That's enough to hold the enemy off at all points, and eventually they all do rout inside there. The battle goes on for ages afterwards because their cav were just waiting outside doing nothing. I went and captured the tower on the edge of the wall, and many of them were already in range of the tower, so we picked up a bunch of extra kills. But you can tell in the top right, this battle lasted the full hour, so we did have to just wait for the timer to run out. We didn't actually finish them off. However, we grabbed the win in the end. Now, let's look at what happened when I got some stuff together near Himeji and was able to put together 3 and a bit armies to move out while still having Himeji fully garrisoned to fight the rebels that are probably going to come from that monk sitting next to it. And we end up with this attack on the Tokugawa Castle down the road. That's a balance bar where we just won't really take casualties, so we can take the place for free. Looks like my 4th army isn't actually close enough to be fighting there, so it could have even been a bit better. There we go, an easy capture. So the plan is to just steamroll forwards with a blob of stacks and try to get to Kyoto. That's our goal. And then the Tokugawa come to attack Nagashima again. They've got the genius plan of doing the same attack they just did, but with only half as many troops. Maybe this will work for them. Now, meet this man. Mr. Metsuke comes over from the Ashikaga Shogunate, and the Metsuke bribes one of my high-ranking officers, and he accepts it. We just lost one of our best generals and half a stack of troops, just like that, and as far as I know, there's nothing you can do to stop them from leaving you. So, if the enemy have enough money and the percentage chance to do the bribe, you just lose the men, and now they are gone. We're going to have to go kill them. Unfortunately, he can just fall back to the castle, and there he is supported by another full stack of troops and a half stack to the right. So with that in mind, I thought I'll just defend this turn and wait for my reinforcements to show up. And here's a Tokugawa invasion coming in again. They decide to attack Nagashima with an even smaller force. That balance bar is outrageous. I was just like, no, do not make me do this. What is happening with this game? Fortunately, the auto-resolve lets me just kill them without having to go through that, so that is nice. Then the Shogunate Metsuke appears to go for another bribe on one of my generals. Looks like he didn't get it right there though, so somebody's loyal at least. Then over here, looks like another rebellion has popped up, and this rebellion's quite interesting. It's actually got good troops in it. Tends to just be Ashigaru, but this time they've got a ton of Yari Ronin. Nicely, they are doing the classic use the archers as an assault unit move, so these katana retainers will just cut down all of the Burr Ashigaru coming over the wall. The Yari Ronin are more of an issue, but they just didn't climb up the wall very well. They came up on that corner there and kind of glitched out, so they didn't do very much. Eventually looks like they unstuck and then walked in single file along the wall. Really, here's the result. Here's where we're going with this. We did win and really didn't take more casualties than we do usually in any way. There is a lot of stuff right ahead of us though. The next enemy castle has 2 and a bit stacks defending it, including a whole bunch of our troops. So I wanted to see what I could set up here. Annoyingly, I can't get around the castle to trigger a field battle with just the 1 stack. But I can set up like this, with one of my reinforcement stacks in ambush position, so if they advance around the north side of the castle, we might ambush them. And of course it hides our true numbers, so the enemy might end up doing a bad sally here. However, they come at us with the agents. The monk achieves nothing, but that geisha kills our faction leader. Then this Metsuke comes and bribes the force besieging the castle and gets almost all of it. So we just lost basically a stack and our faction leader, which is even more of a big deal actually. The enemy counterattack at the siege situation. We have just a few units now defending. This is a doable fight in theory, but there's no point in doing it because since we have our 3 stacks in reserve just off to the left, we might as well try to not fight the enemy this turn and then group up to be stronger in our turn. We get a decent retreat. Our guys retreat back towards where our reserves are. Then one of the enemy stacks pursues and attacks with this really stupid battle where we can just instantly auto-resolve them. So we've actually defeated one of their stacks, including the traitor troops from the first round of betrayals, which included a high-level commander. So a bit of revenge there actually. Both sides lost about a stack of troops during that turn, but it's much more annoying for me because they also gained the stack that I lost. So basically, I'm screwed there. We are being decimated here, and as far as I understand it, not having generals in all of these stacks around the place will mean they're actually easier to bribe. So this combination of having a bunch of assassins and Metsukes could be an enormous issue. So we just need to go for it. We've still got like 5 stacks of troops, so we can absolutely push our way towards the capital. It's only 2 castles away, and now it's going to be 1 castle away because we easily take this next castle, killing a shogunate stack in the process. A geisha goes in and kills one of my new generals, then a Metsuke goes up to one of my stacks and gets pretty much all of it with the bribe. So it's just still happening, ladies and gentlemen. We've only got a few turns until we've lost the campaign. We need to somehow power through this before we lose all of our troops. Well, our 4 remaining stacks are going to fight the traitors, basically. All these troops blocking the road to Kyoto are just our troops who are now fighting us, including one of our decent-ish commanders. In this battle, I'm going to auto-resolve. I originally thought I was going to do it because it's a massive battle, but when you have more than 2 armies, you really don't want to manually resolve, because of course in a manual resolve you can only use 2 armies, but I don't think auto-resolve takes that rule into account. So that result just there was probably better than what we would have got doing a manual resolve using only 2 armies effectively. Their assassin walks off, that's kind of them, but the Metsuke does come in for some more antics, goes for a bribe on one of our stacks, and he gets most of it once again. So there you go, we've now lost about half of our total invasion force to get to where we are, and the enemy have gained that half, so it's continuing to go badly. Now then, an actual invasion's coming in. 2 stacks of Hatakeyama, coming from the secret Hatakeyama bit of territory down at the south end of the peninsula, have made their way up to attack Osaka Castle. Many of them are sneaking in from the south, but again they get stuck near towers, and the towers are cutting troops down super fast, so a bunch of free kills. They have enough troops coming through here though that some of them will make it to our defences. Looks like a few troops got through in the south and have just been killed. We've got 2 towers and a bunch of archers, and that cuts down even the couple of good units that were over here. And that's the end of that really. You can see they've got 3 units outside the castle to the northwest on the minimap that are just standing next to the river. Those guys were trying to get to my cav on the other side of the river, but I guess they couldn't pathfind across it, so there's just a standoff going on up there. Their general has come to stand in front of one of my walls, so I sent the guns out to blast him in the face, giving us this really good result. We absolutely annihilated that massive army. Easy stuff. Now then, let's see what we can do about our latest round of traitors now blocking the road to Kyoto. Well, we still have our 3 armies, and we're only fighting 1 enemy army, so we can gang up on them with all this stuff here and force them out the way. They retreat into the fog of war, and we're going to go after them. I wanted to move to where that bridge was and try to see what was in Kyoto, but I couldn't quite do it, and after crossing the bridge we still couldn't see, so I just attacked. There is a full stack of stuff inside, and the army we just saw retreating is outside. The stuff outside our stuff is much better really. But now we can use all 3 of our armies against the traitors again, since the stack inside is cancelled out by the siege. So we can get this set up right here. This time our traitor forces can't retreat because they already did, and now we'll kill them. Pretty good. We've killed 2 or 3 stacks of our own troops, tons of elite troops as well, and troops that have been with us since the very beginning of the campaign, just being mowed down as we go for the ending here. Not very nice at all. This is super unfun, but at least we're actually at Kyoto now, and the force inside is weak enough that our 3 stacks can just auto-resolve them to death and get in right now, so finally we're getting somewhere. Kyoto is taken, and with that, it's something like you have to wait a year in order to become the shogun, and that's my endgame objective. What I wanted to do is clear out the area north of Kyoto, because we can push our front line against the Hatakeyama over to the set of castles that's just in between the sea and the lake there. So we'll have a nice narrow front line and have a bit more territory if we can establish that. Also makes Kyoto easier to defend. So we take these guys down, then we can link up with the stack that's up to the north, and we'll have 3 armies over there, and of course that 3rd army might come down and help out at Kyoto. There they link up with the armies guarding the Hatakeyama front and quickly overwhelm that castle there. Then we move along to the north of Kyoto and need to take first this castle, mainly just because it's in the way. This choke points the enemy's access to the western part of Honshu, but really we want this next castle, which choke points their access to Kyoto. At this stage, we actually have something like 3 times the number of regions you need to win the campaign, so we could actually just lose everything, or lose 2/3 of everything, if we keep Kyoto and still win. So guarding this castle is what's important. I realise the Ashikaga Shogunate, they've only got 3 regions left, and they're all next to the front line, so what we could do is try to focus down these 3 regions at all costs, because that will then delete all of their agents, and the monks doing all the rebellions, and the Metsuge, who could bribe us into oblivion at any time, will just automatically die. So I decided to make that a priority. The first one's pretty easy. There's this barely defended castle just south of Kyoto, and we can use our really good army made at Kyoto to just instantly stomp in there. Now we need to go both to the right and to the south to use 2 different directional systems. I'm going to split off half of this force, well some of this force that is, and go to join these gunners who went out from Kyoto to besiege the castle to the right. And now that balance bar is good enough to steal this place for free. And we go for the other one to the south as well. An awkward castle because it can be attacked from multiple sides. And again, once I'm done killing them, I get the option to have a vassal, and I will do just that. The vassal provides a slight buffer, not really, because the AI will just declare war on your vassals, but for like 1 or 2 turns where they might forget to do that, it does stop the enemy from moving through this area. With our Hatakeyama choke point, nothing was happening, so I decided to just advance, because while we're sitting in 2 castles on our side, there are 2 castles on the enemy side, so I thought we might as well go sit in those instead. Although with one rule, I couldn't be bothered to fight any actual decisive engagements for it, so I was like, I'll go and take these castles, as long as we can just overwhelm them and take them for free and then just replenish back the losses. We end up with this balance bar after trying some fancy stuff with fighting outside of the castle and failing, and that's good enough. I move on to attack the next castle down the lake. I'm using pretty much all the troops in this area, so I'm barely defending the Hatakeyama front to the north at all now. Just going to commit to this. We grab this castle off the Oda, and yes, now we're nearly there. There's the nice big Azuchi castle right there, and if we take that place, Nagashima will actually be connected to our territory again and will be our front line. I say again, it wasn't at the start, so we will have actually got it in for the first time. As we move on to the next turn, the Oda do counterattack. However, one of my armies outside the castle was hidden, triggering this ambush, and we certainly want to auto-resolve that, because if we did it manually, this would go very badly with our second army just not participating. So there we go, we take down that Oda army. And then another unique event occurs. The Imagawa send a fleet to attack my one decent fleet, raiding this trade route and just blocking off the entrance to the sea between Shikoku and Honshu. And looks like we've got ourselves an actual naval battle featuring our foreign ship with cannons and all. The Nanban ship also doesn't quite work as you'd think, in a couple of different ways actually. Defensively it's very good because the enemy will constantly try to shoot the back of it specifically with arrows, and there's something about it that aggroes the enemy. So you might have noted there, the enemy ships are just moving right past my stuff because they only want to attack my Nanban ship, and they will ignore my other Koboyas for the entire battle as long as the Nanban ship is still afloat. That's incredibly useful, of course. The thing is, the Nanban ship, while really good defensively, is actually quite bad offensively because of Fall of the Samurai. I think I talked about this glitch or exploit or oversight or something in my old Master of Strategy series a while ago. But basically, when Fall of the Samurai came out, it introduced the mechanic of ship armor to the game, and that armor in some way leaked back into vanilla Shogun 2, so now bow Koboyas are considered to be armored ships, meaning cannons can't sink them, so you can shoot them with cannonballs, it just reduces their hull strength, and you have to reduce it really low before they'll start sinking, whereas before that time they would just like explode and sink all over the place if you shot them with cannons. So it's actually very hard to bring them down, and you can see their main group, while getting damaged and very demoralized by the cannon attacks, is actually still kind of alive and is gradually making its way around to the back of our ship to shoot arrows into it. Those arrows can set the ship on fire, and they'll extremely occasionally kill crew, but nothing really that will worry us in any way. The fire rockets are doing a decent looking job of attacking the enemy. The enemy ships look wrecked after being bombarded, but the fire rockets not only don't get many kills, but they also don't set fires that often, it seems. So it doesn't do all that much, but it looks impressive, and it gives the enemy a morale shock, so that's always nice. And you can see we've actually captured tons of stuff as a result of not destroying their fleet. So in many ways our fleet's like increased in strength 50%, although I will need to send them all back to port to repair first. We can keep going on our little mission around the lake to secure this bit of territory, with the vague goal of linking up with Nagashima Castle. Getting that pretty decent balance bar, and we'll just take it. And with that, Nagashima is finally linked in to our continuous empire. We actually have a border with it. I think this is the first time that has happened, so a historic moment for the castle that's held out a very long time. Here I'm pushing forwards against the Oda a little bit. We were standing next to this really poorly defended castle, so I thought we might as well take it, even though that position's a little bit harder to defend than the one we're in already. Just took it anyway. Also turned back because there was an Oda army standing in the midst of all of our stuff, so our stuff swarms them from all directions and we can just take them down with no particular forethought. And with that, it just so happens that at the start of the next turn we've done it. It's now been a year since we took the capital. We are declared shogun, or someone's declared shogun. I don't know, the kid in our family that's the heir or something. You get a cutscene for that, and then after the cutscene we've completed the victory conditions as well, so we get another cutscene, the ending one, which is basically the same as the Shogun becoming cutscene with a few minor differences. And that's it, the Ikko Ikki have won the campaign. Strangely, there's kind of no difference between the Ikko Ikki winning and the Samurai winning. I sort of felt like we were supposed to be distinct from them in some way, but somewhere on the line we just became then. And here we are with the iconic final scene. The Ikko Ikki took over the world and lived happily ever after into the future, where it seems we still rule with an iron fist. Good stuff. So yeah, not really sure what the lore of the Ikko Ikki even is at this point, but apparently it was nothing. Stuff just turned out the same, so this was all a bit of a waste of time in terms of the lore of the world, the alternate history. Anyway, that's the end of that. Here are the final campaign stats. I think the only really notable thing is that we did get something like a 10-to-1 kill-death ratio on our units, and thinking about how many of our units lost must have been garrison units, which were then brought back to life with our Ikko Ikki magic, we probably didn't lose that much stuff at all throughout the war. It was just the other factions being annihilated. The other interesting thing is the agent stats. You can see I recruited tons of agents and lost tons of agents. Basically, most of the agents I recruited just died instantly and didn't do anything. And the ones that survived were the monks hiding at the back doing conversions and stuff. So that was useful at least. And really that's it for the stats, nothing else too interesting going on in there. A successful campaign it seems. That was a difficult one, although a lot of the difficulty is just annoying. It's strange though, because it should have been a lot more difficult, I thought. Looking at the map, you can see we don't even control half the map at this stage as we win the campaign. There's so much enemy stuff out here, and we've just not seen anything from them. There are these big other factions that just left us alone, and I'm sure the AI does get military access rights through their own territories after a realm divide, so they could walk at us in the fashion that like the Tokugawa were doing. But for whatever reason, they didn't, and the naval invasions didn't happen either. I strongly suspect there are actually hard-coded limits in the AI code that stops the AI coalition from attacking you too much to make Realm Divide not be too difficult. So it might be like only 5 armies can be targeted onto the player at any given time, and all of those armies were taken up by like the Oda throwing stacks against Nagashima, and that's why the giant factions like the Uesugi just did nothing for the entire war. That's my theory anyway. You can see there we had to take 25 regions to win and we got like 75 or something. So we completely obliterated the victory conditions. I think I must have had it on short victory. But because you need the capital, I effectively did the long victory conditions in the process of doing the short victory. A classic issue with Total War victory conditions. Anyway, here's the royal family in case you were wondering, including the awkwardly passed over guy on the end of the family line here who can't be the heir despite being the eldest son of the old daimyo technically, for reasons I don't really understand, but that's fine. We're leaving things here then, so thank you very much for watching the Ikko Ikki abridged campaign. That was a bit of a grind, and you should be very happy it was abridged because it was much more of a grind in real life, let me tell you. Thanks for watching.